good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you are watching. Welcome back to Strange Track, where we talk about the craziness and the weird things that happen in Star Trek that most people don't talk about. There are some people that do talk about this. Steve Chives is one of those. Holla out, a quick holla out to him, one of our favorite YouTubers. But I'm always accompanied here. Actually, no, let me go back. This is your boy, Unpopular Black Gamer, aka Dante, and I'm here always with my boy Patrick. Patrick, say hello.
Hello. Yeah, you gotta tell the people who you are.
I gotta tell the
I
people
mean,
who I am. I normally do that, but for some reason I was about to skip over that this one.
we're we're getting too comfortable.
Getting way too comfortable. Getting way too comfortable.
We're
Uh,
learning how to edit and things like that. We're not afraid to make mistakes.
the editing part, man. I'm gonna figure out how I'm gonna edit that part. I'm probably just gonna like cut out the section where I didn't do it. But so today's episode is a bit of different from what we normally do on Strange Trek. This is an episode where we're not going to talk about things that are strange with Star Trek. There was just a particular topic that who came up with this topic? Was it me or you, Patrick? We normally go back and forth with a lot of these topics.
This one might have been you. I think that one was on the list before I started adding stuff.
Yeah, because I there was a list that. So for those that don't know, like we use the Apple ecosystem to like create this list and share it between the two of us. So like he can add titles to the list, I can add stuff to the list, and then we talk it out to see exactly which episode we're gonna do. So this week we decided on first officers. What makes a good first officer in Star Trek? And
Yeah.
I'm kind of excited to talk about this one because we're normally captain centric on this. I should say we're normally captain centric on a lot of our conversations.
hmm
So to be talking about the first officers, and then there's going to be other episodes where we talk about like the other crew members, and we'll focus more in on them just to like. Well, we already did one. We're talking about like Worf being done dirty.
Right.
We want to have more of those types of episodes just to focus on the whole cast and not just like the main cast members, which would be your captain. So this one, Patrick was gracious enough to do the bulk of the research on this one. So Patrick, I'll probably ask you, how would you like to start off, since how you did the bulk of the research?
Um. Well, first, I I don't think that this necessarily wouldn't be a strange one, given what some of these first officers do. And also, if anyone can comment down below exactly how long and where uh, Captain Picard was a first officer at, to clarify for us, that'd be great. So I don't think we can I don't think we have to worry about it not getting strange. I think let's see how should we do this. I think talking about kind of the first officers we've seen so
Mm-hmm.
far, and then getting into maybe what makes a good one. I don't know. What do you
Well,
think? You think that's a good?
okay, so I'll tell you my thoughts on this particular topic when we created it. My thought process was so what really makes a good first officer, and I was thinking of it from my standpoint of being a manager and then having an assistant manager, which the assistant
Mm-hmm.
manager would technically in that particular situation be like your first officer. When I'm not there, he or she takes over for for me and just
Or if
keeps
your console explodes in front of you and someone has to take over because you're injured, or no, I'm just kidding.
at oh wow. I
The
don't know if
show must
consoles
go
are
on.
exploding in the industry that I work in. Um, I would have a lot of questions if I was to survive said explosion. And
Oh, someone's
Probably.
getting sued.
Oh, someone's most definitely getting sued. one
Like,
hundred
this is not a
percent.
risk to my job.
How? This is. Oh my god.
It'd be a weird day at work.
My wife would
Yeah,
be
just in case the
like, "So
audience
let me
doesn't
get
know,
this."
we're not in Starfleet.
We're not at all. Not even the least bit.
We're not in the Navy. We're not in the Army. We're not in any of that. So.
My wife would be like, "So let me get this straight. You were at work, working in front of your computer, and the computer console exploded in your face. Uh, I, I, it's not supposed to do that, right?"
It's like we are suing Lenovo, yes, or Dell or whoever.
Whoever created Lenovo, Dell, IBM, whoever, like whoever created this, they are most definitely getting sued. But so the way that I thought of this is so to me, what makes a good assistant manager would be someone who thinks differently from me, because I don't want a person to be there that thinks exactly the same as I do, or
Mm-hmm.
or is a yes man or yes woman. Like I want them to be able to speak their mind. If I'm doing something wrong, I want them to be able to tell me, I feel like you're doing this wrong and here's why. And actually when I prepped my assistant managers, when I um, hired them on, or should I say, probably it was more during the interview process. I would throw that out. I would throw out a question that would I pretty much gaining their idea of what they would do in a situation where they feel that I was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Because I want them to be able to speak their mind and not feel like there's going to be repercussions afterwards. And when I hired them on, that's what I would say. One of the main things that drew me to you being my assistant manager is you're willing to speak your mind. I know I have blind spots. I know this for a fact. I have blind spots in certain areas. For the most part, I feel like I'm a pretty good manager.
Can you list them off of the office there for the unpopular explorers?
Okay.
I like all your shortcomings and a list of all your
No,
fears.
not no. I won't go into fully all that. But I will say one thing. So I can see I have a talent where I can see the potential in someone. Like I can full heartedly see what they can become if they have fully applied themselves and went a certain direction with their career. The issue, the blind spot with that particular gift is that I can see what they can become, and I'll get so engrossed in what they can become that I don't see the things that they are not doing well.
Mm-hmm.
So I need the assistant manager to be like, okay, yeah, they're great at this and they could become a great this. However, you're not seeing this, this, and this that they're not doing right. And it's like, you're right. You're right. And uh my favorite assistant manager, she she did that so well. Our relationship was really great. And she did that so well that I gave her that full breath to be able to speak her mind. And I never got upset with her, especially if it was something like she was pointing out something like negative about me. I
Mm-hmm.
never got upset with her about that because I
Yeah.
wanted her to be like that.
Yeah, and there's obviously a lot of research, classes, materials, books, and stuff on leadership. I prefer leaders that are like that as well, and try to be that kind of leader at work to the
Mm-hmm.
small team that I have. It is not very easy to do to convince people that it's not going to show up on your evaluation.
It's
This is a
not.
safe space. Please tell me what you think. And I almost have to like go out of my way sometimes um, to just like put the words in their mouth. Like I'll read like hesitancy first with the
Mm-hmm.
plan, and then it's like, okay, well, what do you think we should do? And then it's like, well, you got like really everything we should probably be doing, and it's like, I can tell like you don't believe that right now. So then I'll have to like keep like working at it, and I think a good first officer, like you said, just kind of like knows to do that,
Yes.
as opposed to like what happens in the real world sometimes, which is like, tell me what your concerns are about my plan. Keep in mind, I made the plan by myself. That's why we're having this meeting. I'm not like married to doing it this way, but I guess there's enough bad bosses, autocratic bosses out in the world that you run into the wrong people at the wrong time in your career. You kind of think anyone in charge is going to get upset if you tell them, "Hey, I think you're screwing up here, and we need to go in this direction." But I've never been one of them, and have tried to over-index
Hmm.
on asking for that. I think one of my blind spots as a manager, and if anyone who works for me ever stumbles upon this, don't use this against me, is I tend to get like super committed to achieving the goal, the mission, the whatever, even
Hmm.
when it's like sometimes it's a good thing because I can go a little bit further and we actually get the thing. But sometimes it's like, yeah, we need to call it quits. Like kind of similar to what you're saying about
Yeah.
seeing the potential in people. Like sometimes I need like that voice of reason to come and be like, we can come at this another day. Like
Yeah.
like it's time to let this go and move on to other things. So that's what if I had like a first officer, I'd put them on alert for. Be like, look, I'm a strategist. Like I always think we can win and
Yeah.
get what we need. Sometimes you gotta remind me, like, but that's not the best way to spend the time and resources.
See,
Let's just leave.
what helped me get to that point though, because I've been a manager multiple times throughout my adult life. But like my first time being a manager, I fumbled a lot. I truly did. But it was trying to understand what type of manager I myself wanted to be. And you find yourself kind of like mimicking people that you thought were great managers in the past. But then like, I came to the realization that, oh, that person was great at doing this because that's who they were. So I
Hmm.
had to learn, like, okay, who am I? Who am I? What is my greatest strengths? What are my weaknesses? And owning up to that. That's the biggest thing. Owning up to the fact that I'm great at this, but I suck at this.
Oh
And
yeah,
and really like saying to yourself, like, you're not great at every area. And I feel like
yeah.
as a leader, the main head honcho, that is numero uno. Like, you need to know your strengths and weaknesses, but then also be able to put a crew behind you that covers up your weaknesses.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And Picard lightly hits on that at
Mm-hmm.
Encounter at
Encounter
Farpoint when he
Farfront.
meets
Mm-hmm.
Riker for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
and it's on like a non-trivial thing, and I think we see how they balance each other out during the series a little bit better. But Picard's definitely like, I don't know why Starfleet put me on a ship with kids.
Kids, yeah.
I am terrible with kids. Don't even really want kids myself. Ha, joke's on him. He's gonna get one.
He's gonna get one.
Don't even really want kids myself. Can you like make sure that I'm not just like epically fumbling with these kids on this ship? And I think Riker kind of lives up to that, and we find out Picard's better with kids
Well,
than even he expected, which is another first officer note that I made in
well,
there.
Picard thing was that he was just very stern. He's a stern person, so he never thought that that would be good for a kid's growth, or to even like help a kid understand like their way around life. But it turns out that that's just who he is. So he needs to lean into that. And
Yeah,
two, that doesn't necessarily mean that a kid's not going to not like that. There are some kids that won't, but there are a lot of kids that will. A lot of kids normally like structure.
yeah,
So if you give them that, which that's what Picard is, he is structure to a T.
yeah,
It in
yeah,
some cases, yeah, he can be kind of relaxed and everything, but he loves the structure. So kids that he ended up interacting with over the course of his career, they actually like looked up to that, and I don't think he fully realized that.
Well, it probably took the episode that I was talking about in the notes, disaster,
Yeah,
um,
one of
for
my
him
favorite
for
episodes.
that to even like once he made like the little girl or the young woman, I can't remember how old
I think she was
she was.
like
She like
15, 14, 15.
15. Okay, so once she made the young lady first officer and was able to like organize those kids and calm them down and like save them ultimately, given what happened to the turbo lift
Mm-hmm.
like 2 minutes after they left. I don't. I think if it were serialized television, you could like point to that moment as a change. But I think it did kind of change the way that he looked at kids and approached the kids on the ship because it's like, oh, okay, you can. I don't have to be different to deal fairly and um, be around it. I think
Mm-hmm.
he's always
Mm-hmm.
kind of uncomfortable with it, but like that had to have been a confidence building moment for him with kids, saving their lives, getting them to stop crying, um, and all that stuff, all on a broken ankle, which I can imagine dealing with kids with a
Which
broken bone.
which at that point in the series, yeah, he had a broken ankle. Uh, which at that point in the series, that was the fifth season and the fifth episode of the season. So, like, you saw points before that episode where he wasn't all that great with children,
Right.
but it was like by that point, I think he drew a lot of his paternal instincts that could actually show that he could be a good father.
Yeah. And speaking of Strange Trek, is was that episode before or after he got turned into a kid himself in the
Oh,
transporter
that is
or shuttlecraft?
that's a very good question.
Yeah, I
Uh,
can't remember where it is because it was what him, Guinan, and Roe all got turned into kids and
I'm
locked
pretty sure it was
into.
after because Roe, I believe, didn't come in until season six.
Okay.
If I'm no, wrong. She was in the fifth season because she was part of that disaster episode.
Oh, you're right. I wonder. I mean, I don't want to Google it. I'd rather worry about it or wonder about it, but I don't know if that's interesting podcasting to sit here and not know. I guess I'll Google it.
And I'm trying to look it up. I had looked up for some reason. It keeps going. Google keeps going back to disaster. Um, me looking it up, but
Oh, yeah. I guess both of us looking it up would be worse podcasting, worse radio. To hold on,
uh,
unpopular explorers. We got to Google for about 5 minutes here. Talk amongst yourselves.
it's entitled Rascals. It's season six, episode 7.
Okay. Okay,
Uh,
so there's like two moments where he starts. No wonder he ends up having a kid after this, even though he doesn't totally know about it.
I'm about to say I don't think he really was a full parent there because Crusher kind of took that away from him. But enough about Star Trek Picard that we don't like to talk about on the
It's gonna
show.
come up again.
No, it's not. No, it's not. No, that's the one and only time. One per episode is my
It's
limit.
gonna come up again because
One.
there are three first officers, and one first officer we for sure have
Oh,
to talk about.
we're not going to talk about those. Oh no, we're going over that. Like
If we don't talk about Seven of Nine being a first officer,
I don't
given
care.
what she did in the
I
show,
don't care. It's
but it
Star
was in the
Trek.
good season.
It's Star Trek Picard. I don't care.
It was in the good season.
Ah, Patrick.
It was in the good season where Seven was first officer.
Okay,
And she was a good first officer
if we
in
have
there as
time, we'll
well.
go over it. But we're not starting there. We're what where I want to start is uh, first officers that we believe were perfect. Like this was the perfect first officer for this captain.
Interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, Spock and Kirk for sure um, are at the top of that list.
So why is that?
Well, I mean, and in full transparency, we have to say this every episode. We have not watched all of TOS. We're going to end up watching TOS in a rewatch, on this channel, basically.
You know
So
what? You know
stay
what?
tuned for that.
We have to kind of reiterate that in a way because
Yeah,
it's not like we haven't watched TOS. We have. We were just extremely young when we did.
yeah.
We just
Except
have
that,
not done a rewatch.
except that episode we watched for last week's conversation.
Yeah, yeah. Whew, yeah.
Oh man.
But so
So
I don't want Trekkies to think that we haven't watched TOS and like, oh, they're not true Trekkies because they never watched
oh
TOS.
yeah.
It's a
I've
blasphemy
seen
thing.
the yeah, as I described it, I've seen the greatest hits. Like,
Yeah,
we just haven't seen all of it. So, I think
or
Kirk and Spock. Right. Oh, go
or
ahead.
remember all of it is what I want to say.
Yeah, yeah. That's the difficult part because some of it's just a fever dream. Quite frankly, to watch Shore Leave is a
Oh,
absolute fever dream.
I'm a
Um,
drink when we watch that.
yeah, yeah. The reason why they top my list, because I know that might surprise you, because I was initially going to go Picard Riker, but there's something about the Spock and Kirk dynamic, and it carries over to the
Mm-hmm.
movies, and it carries
Mm-hmm.
over to the other thing you don't like to talk about in Star Trek,
Mm-hmm.
the different timeline, is that I don't know, their bond is like two smart guys that want to get the mission um, done, and when they conflict, it's all about getting to something that makes more sense to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and to me, even though I expect a first officer to speak his or her mind, I do expect them to generally get along and complement the captain's skill set, like we were
Exactly.
talking about. And I think there are
Exactly.
times where Kirk, seeing the mission, the purpose, and the higher good that needs to be done over the logical thing,
Mm-hmm.
gets weighed out correctly, whereas sometimes Spock being able to talk about the most logical thing to do and convincing Kirk of it is the right thing to do, which oddly enough happens in that shore leave episode. Now that I think about it, like they just, it just works so well. They're like two pieces in the same puzzle. If that makes any sense.
Okay. So so with Kirk and Spock, I don't necessarily not like the Kelvin timeline. I do. I actually enjoyed watching those movies, and
Yeah, me too.
it's one of the only set of movies that my wife actually likes watching with me because she
Yeah,
actually went to the movie theater with me to watch all three, and actually thoroughly enjoyed herself watching them. Not like, oh, I'm doing this just because my husband loves Star Trek. Uh,
and credit where credit is due. Star Trek was off TV when those movies aired,
mm-hmm,
so
mm-hmm.
like we needed that. Whatever
We
you think
did.
about those movies, we needed that, and you needed Discovery too.
We
So
did. But
just everyone needs to accept that.
the difference between the two though is like you had Kirk in the original timeline that was extremely smart and intelligent, but also brash at his decision making.
Hmm.
In the Kelvin timeline, they didn't fully focus on how smart and intelligent he was. Uh,
Yeah,
they just really fully leaned in and heavily on how brash he was. And cowboyish would be one of the terms to use for this
right.
particular situation because his thought process on doing certain things would be like kind of like go at it head on without formulating a plan. And in the original series, and by that account, the movies as well, it showed that he did do certain things head on when he had to, but there were certain situations that he actually thought about, like that he was
Hmm.
actually smart in how he formulated those plans. However, his cowboy side did show up a lot, and that's where Spock came in to temper
Yeah,
that side. To be like, okay, Captain, we got to think about this logically. This is the issue, da 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 da. And Spock was not scared to voice his opinion on things that he felt like Kirk wasn't doing correctly.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. No, they were a match made in heaven.
Yeah,
And it's why even watching some of the bad episodes of TOS is still more enjoyable because there's just something about like, man, Kirk and Spock are going to figure this thing out. And they kind of play that up in one of the movies, right? Where
yeah.
I think Kirk was like, "Yeah, I know I'm never going to get unalived as long." He's talking to Bones too, I think, in this because when we're together, like we can pretty much do anything, and that pretty much pans out
Yeah.
in the shows and the movies. So yeah, hard. Although keeping with Strange Trek, it does raise something that I think is kind of weird about the first officer role
Okay. Go
overall in
ahead.
the series, which is why wasn't Spock in command? Like he was also the science officer. Like it seems like
So,
somewhere in Star Trek you could multitask and then you had to stop multitasking and just be the first officer, and I'm not sure like
so
what that was.
we touched on this when we were talking about this episode and how we were going to tackle it. Um, and one of the things that I wanted to point out was that in the original series, they even the first officer was the head of a particular track within the starship. So for everybody that knows Star Trek, I mean, we just need to reiterate it. You know, you have the engineering track, you have the science track, you have the medical track, and then you have the command track.
Which could be the subject of a future episode. So,
But you know what? We probably could. Now that you bring that up.
I have
Uh,
it on the list. We should talk about it.
oh, okay. For some reason, I don't remember that title, but okay. it,
The list is getting pretty lengthy at this point. We're going
it
to be at
is.
this for for a
It is.
while. I don't expect you to have the list
Which
memorized.
which is a good thing. Which is a good thing. Like we can't run out of material.
Hmm.
so, but like the biggest thing there was in the original series, even the first officer was the head of a department. So Spock was the head of the science department, but also the first officer of the ship, which is kind of like weird to us because it's like, okay, when do you have the time to do both? Like,
Yeah,
can you be the first officer that deals with duty rosters, deal with new personnel, deal with employee evaluations, but also on top of that, be the head of the science department that deals with all the scientific data that you collect while traveling, the scientific data that you picked up when you just left a planet, and be able to formulate that and create a report to send back to Starfleet. Like it's a lot of work on both
and
sides.
we see Spock doing this work
Mm-hmm.
in a hilarious episode of Strange New World where he's about to unalive Sam Kerr because he's having a science team meeting and
I forgot
and
about
he's
that,
doing this.
which is one of my
Yeah.
favorite. It's one of my favorite moments in Stage New Worlds.
Oh, it was awesome. And he's having this meeting, and he's in a command structure that has a first officer that I'm sure we'll get to. And so it's like, well, if it was that much work, did you just get
Mm-hmm.
really efficient, or did we just not really do science on the Enterprise anymore under Kirk? Like it's a head scratcher, quite frankly. And I get that Spock is, an alien, a Vulcan, and he, boy, the shore leave episode keeps giving in terms of information. Apparently, he doesn't need rest, so
Yeah,
maybe
not to
he
say he
can.
wouldn't be able to do it. It's
Yeah,
still just a lot, and
yeah,
it was like look, I'm thinking about this not just from Spock's standpoint, because Spock himself, yeah, he doesn't need much sleep. He is very focused. He can probably like knock out all these reports that he has to do all within the same day. I'm thinking of the non-Vulcan
yeah,
people,
exactly.
a human that is also a first officer and also the head of science.
Yeah, and if anyone out there is thinking, well, for a little extra pay, I'll put in some extra work, and it was like, yeah, they don't get paid in Star
They
Trek
don't
if
get
you missed
paid,
that.
so it's literally like this
Post
is just
scarcity
your
society. So
yeah. This is just what you do. And granted, like, yeah, well, you know what? We probably need to look at this when we talk about this particular topic about the 36 hour workday. They talked about
Oh
the
yeah,
36-hour workday in TNG, but I don't believe that they talked about it in TOS. I don't.
right.
So the question would be: is it had to be a 36-hour workday in TOS? It had to be because I can't think of it differently. Because it'd be like, okay, oh, so they had a 24-hour workday in TOS, but a 36-hour in TNG.
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's weird. Oh, also, going back to the list of what makes a good
Mm-hmm.
first officer,
Mm-hmm.
there is one thing that Spock didn't have to do that future first officers did have to do, which was he never had to convince the captain not to go on an away mission. Like it was just back then they just sent the captain on every away mission, and whatever happens happens.
So I will say that that was a retcon from the TNG era. So in TOS, the captain was normally on every away mission, but in TNG, I guess Gene Roddenberry and all his infinite wisdom actually like sat back and like thought about this. Just like, well, it wouldn't make sense for the captain to go on every away mission because the away missions are the most deadly missions out of
Yeah,
all the missions that they could do. So it's a possibility that the captain could get unalive during those missions. So it doesn't fully make sense for the captain to be the main person to go down.
yeah, yeah.
They would
Oh, and for
in diplomatic situations, but not
oh yeah, first
in
contact.
yeah,
Yeah,
but not in situations where they feel like it would be extremely dangerous. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was about to clarify for the audience. If you don't know, YouTube doesn't like the K word a bit,
Oh
so we're saying
yeah,
unalive because we have to. There is a list of things that they don't like to say. So if you're like, why are they saying it that way? Well, it's because you know this video would never get monetized.
yeah.
And I think last week we were like throwing those words around pretty liberally, and I kind of remembered like the next day, like, oh, that's right, you shouldn't really say that on YouTube.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna have fun editing that one. I'm just gonna like bleep out
Yeah,
or like mute the audio for that one point for that. So
yeah. I
that's
don't
gonna
know
be
how
a
I'm
fun
gonna
one.
get through the Neelix episode.
We're probably gonna have to make that a Star Trek After Dark episode, so you can just like curse to your heart's contempt on that.
Yeah, whenever whenever you start monetizing this website, this stream, like that one is gonna get marked for no money, no money, no ads there. So
And we're kind of gonna know that in the beginning, like we're doing this with the idea that we probably will not make money off this video. So, let's just go with it.
yeah, no holds barred. Okay, I derailed us there. What was the last thing you said?
Just speaking about uh, how Spock was to Kirk, and how
Okay,
different that they were. So it was a good balance there, which goes back to what I was saying about how I look at being a manager and having an assistant manager. So I felt like that was a good balance where Spock was able to tell Kirk um, the things that he didn't do well and be able to bring those up in like it's kind of a way of like the buck stops with the captain. The captain is the final say so, but the
right.
first officer needs to um, be able to speak their mind about a situation to help influence the captain on the correct path to take. And a lot of times, I felt like Spock did that very well. And
Yeah,
during our retread of that series, we'll probably see that more,
yeah, yeah. Saved the Federation countless times in that partnership. So
countless times. Okay, let's talk
let's
about
see.
the next uh, great duo, which, in my opinion, would be Picard and Riker.
Ooh, can I be controversial again?
Oh no, you're going to be controversial about Picard and Riker.
we can be controversial for like 5 minutes,
You know how I feel about Riker.
because we haven't seen a ton of it,
Okay.
but you got to admit there's something that really goes well between Pike and Una on Strange New
Oh.
Worlds,
Oh yeah. Yeah. 100
but you
percent.
wouldn't put it up above Picard and Riker.
So the only reason why I won't put them up above Picard and Riker is only because we got 2 seasons so far
Okay,
of Pike and Una, and actually, I guess you could say 3 seasons if you add in D Space, not D Space Nine, but Discovery's second season. But even in
yeah, but
that
she wasn't in
case,
it that
Una
much.
was only shown in like a handful of episodes.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, then let's get to them. I will agree with that. We haven't quite gotten enough. We haven't actually seen them have too much of a disagreement, so we
Hmm.
don't know how they work through that yet. So okay, we can go. I just wanted to throw that out there because I was like, because they're a very effective duo as well. But okay, Picard and Riker.
I mean, they are. They're on my list of effective captain and first officer. But
Yeah,
I will definitely have to put Riker and Picard above them.
yeah, and they have an interesting relationship in that they don't know each other seemingly. Picard
Hmm.
seems to hire Riker kind of based on his application. I don't even know if they did interviews. Not sure what the hiring process was for that one.
if if
So they're kind of like,
if
mhm.
I'm remembering this correctly, Picard stated that there was a particular instance that was in his file that uh, the captain of his previous command wanted to go down to a planet, but Riker kept him from going.
Yeah,
Like he
which,
protested with him going, saying that it would be too dangerous of a situation, and to lose the captain of a ship would be more detrimental than losing the first officer of the ship.
yep. Which, by the way, if I was hiring a first officer, having a first officer that thought it was very important to keep the captain alive, I would find that endearing.
You know what?
That would mean a
I
lot
think
to
I
me.
would love that first officer. Oh, you want to keep me alive? You know what? I think I like you.
This is good. This is good.
Oh, you don't want me to die so you can assume command? No, you want to keep me alive. Okay. I think I
It's like,
like
whew,
you.
I don't have a first officer from the mirror universe. Thank goodness.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. Yeah, their dynamic is interesting because I think behind the scenes, the way they were kind of split up, because I'm not sure if Roddenberry is ever like totally on board with
Hmm.
Patrick Stewart as Picard, but it's like Picard is like cerebral structure in command,
Hmm.
tactician type person,
Very
and then
diplomatic.
Riker was
Hmm.
yeah, and Riker was supposed to be like Kirk,
Yeah,
basically, like
brash.
yeah,
Not necessarily unhinged, but like can jump into the fray without a plan and still end up like fixing the situation.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, exactly.
and
Which he
and
does on multiple occasions.
he does, and I actually liked that dynamic from the first officer, and not necessarily from the captain, because I do feel like the captain normally is the older is an older person by that
Yeah,
time because they've gone through the whole command track. Well, not the command track, but the whole ensign, lieutenant, or lieutenant junior grade, full fledged lieutenant, lieutenant commander, then commander and captain. So like
yeah,
it normally takes time, but there are situations where um, some officers are fast tracked because they're just really good officers and they could probably make a great captain, such as James T. Kirk.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. You
but
got to have that potential as a first officer to be able to be captain. Not only because you're going to be
mhm,
captain in certain situations, but like
mhm.
first officers need to become captains, which becomes during best of both worlds kind of a sticking point
I
between
was
the
I
two. But
was going to okay, and I have a confession to make. So So the Deep Space Nine episode that I always talk about is probably like my all-time favorite episode of Star Trek. Period. Where
Mm-hmm.
where Cisco, you know, unallows a senator to bring the Romulans into. Well, technically he doesn't, but
The pale moonlight. Yeah.
he's part of the full ploy. Yeah, Pale Moonlight. That's probably like my greatest episode of all time in Star Trek. However,
Yeah.
the best of both worlds, part one and two, definitely has to come second with my favorite episode or episodes of Star Trek.
Yeah.
And I believe by this time, so this is at the end of season three, going into season four, that the best of both worlds occur. And by this time, you've had enough of Riker to show like the type of officer that he is, and to show his level of growth from what he was when he first came aboard the Enterprise to this point.
Mm-hmm.
And Riker was brash a lot in the beginning, but by this time, Picard has been more of an influence on him to where he thinks out situations and he's less brash and more calculating and
Yeah.
creating a plan. And 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 this is probably the best dynamic within this episode because they introduce Shelby, who is brash.
Yeah.
And
Who is Riker
yes, Riker when he
before? Yeah.
first came aboard the Enterprise, from how we know him. Granted, Riker, I believe, and tell me if I'm wrong or not, Riker was a first officer before he became the first officer of the
I do not think
Enterprise.
you're wrong about that because, well, you mentioned the story earlier. That's when he was first officer
Yeah,
somewhere else. He was getting. I think it was the Hood. Like he and
I
Geordi were
believe
on that ship,
so.
and I think they came over
And
together, basically.
and that's why, and I don't know the full um, time frame of how like how long a person's supposed to be a first officer before they're considered for captaincy. But
Because
it
maybe John Luc Picard was a first officer for 22 years. We can't. Someone comment below.
we
How long was John Luc Picard a first officer? He also might have been a captain for like 30 years, depending on what you look
just
at
letting
before getting
everybody
to the
know
Enterprise. So
we tried to look this up beforehand and try to do research, but like both the memory alpha and the memory gamma that we looked at like had conflicting information and we just were not sure. So we can't say for a fact how long Picard was a first officer before he became captain.
yeah, exactly.
So
But if you know, comment below.
please do, please do. Uh, one of the one of the biggest things about Riker's ascendance into being a captain was how Picard influenced him. And so when Shelby came aboard and Picard pretty much pulled Riker aside, it was just like, why the hell have you not decided to become a captain? Like
Yeah, she was the forcing mechanism.
she was.
Hey, you're ready to be a captain. You were like how I was when you got here, and now you are different and ready to take someone like me on a different ship, and I will come here and do what you do. Like that's how this thing is supposed to work.
Yeah, and she wasn't wrong. She was not
Mm-mm.
wrong with pointing this out and pretty much being brash to Commander Riker, saying like, personally, you're in my way. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Like, I want your job. You are in my way. You should have been captain. At this point, I think it was like three times already that he had been
yeah.
giving
It was
a captaincy.
yeah, and that admiral in that uh, episode made the most empty threat ever in Star Trek, where he's like, I don't know how many times we're going to pull out the captain's chair for Riker. And it's like, we live in a post scarcity society. You can do it as many times as you want. You're going to be building more ships. That comment makes no sense.
And I do also get it from Riker's standpoint. Like the Enterprise was a good gig. It was probably the best gig in all his career. He was part of the flagship of the Federation.
Hmm.
Even though he wasn't the captain, he was still the first officer, and a lot of the other ships that were pulled out for him, so to speak, didn't even come close to the prestige that he had with the Enterprise.
Right.
So he was trying to look for a particular situation within his career that made sense to him and wouldn't be a downgrade from what he's currently doing. Because I mean, I would probably be the same way if I'm being serious. Like, why would I take a lesser ship, take command of a lesser ship, uh, when I'm the first officer of probably the greatest ship in the Federation?
And this is where you can tell they hadn't fleshed out Picard's backstory at all, because Picard could have easily rebutted and been like, "Well, because that's what I had to do. I was captain somewhere else, and then I got the flagship or the flagship class type ship. So you go be captain somewhere else, and then you'll be back here in a few years. But you got to be captain first."
Yeah,
But they
but
didn't know to write that at the time, so I don't.
yeah, but like Picard's, from what we could understand, without the the craziness of how long he was the first officer.
See, that's
Uh,
what the Picard series should have been. Them fixing this timeline of
man,
how his career.
what?
It's
What?
like,
This,
wait, he went from helmsman to captain. I'm
like I
very
said, there's a
confused.
lot of ways they could have did the Picard. You know what would have been really great with I've never touched on this, but I have to. I'm sorry.
Hmm.
See, it's how you brought back up Star Trek Picard again when I told you not to. So it's your
And it's
fault.
gonna happen again.
It's your fault. Uh, One of the things that I felt like that they should have done was showed Picard in a when he was younger, like probably like when he first became first officer on one of those ships. I know it wasn't Stargazer. He was the first officer Stargazer, but I
Somewhere.
think the memory alpha said he was a first officer before Stargazer, whatever. But they should have made him the first officer, like started off in the series showing that dynamic, and made the actor that played Jack be hit the younger
Yes,
version of him.
that would have been highly entertaining compared to what we got.
Completely entertaining.
But in case the Picard writers or people ever land on it, I'm sure you've heard it from everywhere, and we're just piling on. Thank you for trying, but yeah, like just take the notes. Let's do a better job next time.
See, no, no. See, you're being way too kind. No, fuck that. Uh, I know we don't normally
Gonna have
curse,
to bleep
but
that
he
out.
no. I know we don't normally curse, but he brought up Patrick brought up Star Trek Picard, which requires at least one curse word. All right, we are 48 minutes into the stream. It is fine. All right, but
And it's gonna happen again. We got one more time to talk about Picard at least.
I
So
don't feel like they tried hard enough. If I'm being completely and totally honest with how that series went out, I do not feel like that they completely tried hard enough, because you had casts a cast and writers room that were on the original Star Trek series. So they knew the things that they did wrong. They knew the things that they did right. I don't understand why they couldn't like fully do that with a new series and be like, you know what, we had that issue in the previous one. We shouldn't do that. This is the direction we should go. It is mental to me. I don't understand how, like, with how terrible season one and season two was of Picard, like how that could occur again.
yep,
I'm sorry, I ran over.
I don't disagree. I do not disagree. I did derail you from your point that you were making.
Oh, what
Would you
was
like
my
to
point?
return to it?
Oh, what was my point?
Yeah, we
Okay.
don't have playback. We were talking
Uh,
about Riker and
uh,
Riker evolving. Oh, we were talking about Riker and Shelby.
yes, Riker and
This is
Shelby.
going to be a
So,
clear edit for you. Yeah, we were talking about Riker and
oh no,
Shelby.
no, I'm adding. I'm making sure that whole rant that I just did, that's gonna be definitely in the edit. But uh, Shelby reminded Riker of how he once was, which was
Yeah.
it was perfect. It was perfect bringing in a brand new character, brand spanking new character. You never heard of this character before until this episode, and how she was. You can't you as a fan of the next generation, you came into this episode like, man, why is she being like that? Man, she's being such a man. Why? Like
Mm-hmm.
this is Riker. Like you're not supposed. But then as you start to see like her motivations and why, and understand what she is doing, and then also correlating that back to how Riker was when he first came on. Because when he had the conversation with Picard, and Picard was like, "What the hell are you doing?"
Yeah.
And
Why are you still
Riker,
here?
yeah, why are you still here? And then Riker was saying like, Shelby is very brash and unhinged and needs more discipline. And Picard, well, that reminds me of a certain first officer that I know. Like pretty much smacking him in the face of like the type. This was once you
Mm-hmm.
at one point in time. After a while of us two being together and me being an influence on you, like not to say you still don't have that part in you, you do, but you also have now the measured part that sits down and like thinks about a situation completely through before acting on the situation.
Yeah.
So, but
Which is
you,
what,
uh huh,
yeah, it's what Deanna tried to tell him as well,
mm-hmm.
and he didn't take it the right. Can you imagine going through a midlife crisis and having to fight the Borg at at the
And
same time?
And when Deanna was telling him that was it was a situation where like I mean Deanna's is for all intents and purposes at this point in the series, I know they were like had this off and on again type situation, but that's technically his lover.
Mm-hmm.
So like my wife telling me how I'm going to have a defensive posture towards it. It's just how it is. It's like,
And that scene kind of plays out how, uh, from what I understand, wives
uh-huh.
respond to midlife crises. For those who don't know, I'm single, so and not going through a midlife crisis, so this is all kind of theoretical to me. But she kind of responds to that scene, from what I understand, how women respond to it, which
Uh-huh.
is like, I don't know what you want me to tell you right
I don't know what you want to say.
now.
What you want to say.
You're all
And,
over the place, man.
and for those that are listening, like I am married. I've pretty much pointed out that I have a wife throughout this whole broadcast, but like I am married and I am dealing with a midnight crisis. So
Well, we're gonna unpack that off there.
I mean, I ended up buying a fast car, Patrick. I mean, come on now.
Oh, that's true. That's true. The signs were there. I should be a better
Oh yeah,
friend.
completely there. But also at the same time, like most men, I'm not at all oblivious to the fact that I'm having a midlife crisis. So, like, I will point that out. I am completely real with myself to say that I currently am having one. But so I do. This does remind me of some of the conversation that me and my wife had dealing with this particular situation, and she's just being like, "I don't know what the hell you want me to say during this time. This sounds like some stuff that you need to unpack yourself." So
Pretty much. Except your wife also isn't the ship's counselor, and it's like, wait, isn't it your job to?
once again, they were lovers. So
I
how?
know, right?
So being that
Seems like
ship
we needed
counselor,
another ship's counselor
yeah,
for
yeah.
Riker to go talk to.
So like it and that's where the conflicts of interest come into play. And excuse everybody, you probably hear my dog in the background. Uh, my wife isn't here, who normally keeps the dogs in check while I'm doing these podcasts. So like you're probably going to hear him and my other dog multiple times throughout this podcast. I do apologize.
They're great though.
Oh, they are. They're just like probably somebody's. See now that they're getting into it right now. That means somebody's coming by. Um, Dang, that threw off my whole thought process that I'm thinking
Yeah,
about.
you're in rhythm there, but like Deanna is reacting to like a wife reacts to a man going through a midlife crisis, um,
She does.
and so it's a completely expected and normal reaction. It is interesting how they resolve his midlife crisis when he defeats the Borg. He just kind of finds contentment with where he's at, and he's like, "I'm not ready to go, and it's my business why I'm not ready to go. So I'm gonna chill here for the next few seasons and a couple movies, and then I'm gonna go take over the Titan."
Well, granted, that was their way of keeping the cast together
Yeah,
because,
because it was '90s TV, and people
mhm.
weren't in and out. Yeah.
And really, granted, like me thinking about like all the commands that they gave him before that, he would have been dead
Oh,
at
the
least
Melbourne
twice.
did. I mean, they were floating through the wreckage, and they were like, "Oh, there's the Melbourne."
Yeah, yeah.
Glad you weren't here for this. I gotta be honest. Great call on not taking that promotion.
You would have been dead and part of this wreckage right here.
Yeah.
So,
Oh man.
like, but granted, like I said, that was part of them keeping the cast together and still be able to create the series because they needed to milk that cow as much as possible, and seven seasons was what was needed for that, and four movies. But I do believe like
Oh, you'll
they
recognize Nemesis, but I can't mention Picard. Okay.
shh. Okay. In fairness, which was worse, Star Trek Picard season 1 and 2, or Star Trek Nemesis? And silence.
That's a. I mean, that's a whole episode in itself.
I feel like it is
Dear,
too.
good lord. I'm
See,
honestly gonna have to think on that. I feel like I want to reflexively say Picard season 1 and 2 because at least there was some excitement in the movie, but the movie was just no.
there was some parts of the movie that was actually halfway decent. I feel like I'll get drugged through the Star Trek community just for saying that. But Star Trek Deep Space, not Deep Space. Oh my god, Star Trek Picard season 1 and 2. Um,
No bueno.
I couldn't
No
find
bueno.
any enjoyment through each episode.
Yeah, we're gonna have to unpack that. That's gonna be a big tangent because I don't disagree with you. I can think of a few moments that were entertaining, but unpacking all that's going to take us wildly off course of the first officer
Okay,
episode.
I'll put that as one of our court episodes.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. See if there's anything.
that would be a good court episode. But
Yeah. But no, we're talking about Riker, and he
mm-hmm.
goes on a progression, and he does end up. They always position him as a better tactician than Picard. So there is like a somewhat weakness, I guess,
well,
Picard has that he
well,
feels.
and they showed that multiple times throughout the series that Riker is a better tactician than Picard, but Picard's strength was more in diplomacy.
Yeah,
So that
made for a
doesn't
great pair.
exactly it doesn't knock Picard. Not to say that I mean, because they have a maneuver named after him, the Picard maneuver, what he
Right.
did with the Stargazer. So it's not like he doesn't have tactical elements within his repertoire that like he's really good at. It's just Riker is just even better at that than he is.
Yeah, yeah. No, they. I think you're right. I think they're the second best pair. I think one more thing about Riker
Mm-hmm.
that goes into the general list of what you want in a first officer um, is his judgment was on display multiple times, especially in the best of both worlds, but multiple times um, when it gets dialed in later when he grows the beard, as the fan community calls it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he has like really good judgment up into the point of when to commit a mutiny, when replace that episode where there was like the replacement Picard. He was going to fly him into radiation. So like in that whole episode, he's like working the crew and being like, "Is the captain acting weird? Is everyone seeing what I'm seeing?" And like
Mm-hmm.
knows not to just like jump to it. So like he has that amount of judgment there. And when we get to the bad first officers, someone commits a mutiny for bad reasons
Okay,
later on.
so one thing I do want to bring up with Riker, however, is
Okay.
the episode where the community feels like he was not a great first officer, and that's when um, I forgot the name of the captain. Forgive me for this, but the when
Jellicoe.
I figured you would know it. I figured you would know it.
Yeah.
Uh,
And you shouted out Steve Shives earlier, and he does an excellent episode defending Jellicoe to the point where I'm like, I think
yeah,
Shives might be right about this.
I hated him and loved him for that episode. By the way, because on
Yeah.
one end I was just like you're wrong. Commander Riker's flawless. F you. No, you are wrong. But on the other side of me, I'm just like, dang it, he has a point though.
He has a good point. And he immediately promotes Data, who all of us would be like, yeah, Data. He could be a first officer anywhere. Like, uh, and Data gets along with the situation to
Yeah,
the
but
point of a successful mission.
Data's adaptable though. That and you learn that from that particular episode that Data when he's with Picard is more free flowing. Um, and there are even like quips that he would say, and
Yeah.
even go into rants that Captain Picard would have to like stop him. That's enough, Data. Thank you, Mister
Yeah.
Data. But he never did that with Jellicoe. Never. It was just all straight, stern, by the book, XYZ, carry it out with Jellicoe.
And we got to see him in the cool red command shirt for the first and only time. So
Oh
like
yeah, yeah,
we got that out of it. So I think about the Riker Jellicoe situation, not Riker being a poor first officer. I think of it as Riker being a poor first officer for Jellicoe because I think I mentioned earlier in the episode that I think one
mm-hmm.
thing you want is to be able to get along with your captain. And this is real life too, like at
Yeah,
work and things like that.
yeah,
Like sometimes how you jive with someone is going to be the main determinant on whether you succeed or fail or they succeed or fail with you. Like if you guys have like personal issues because you have different styles, different approaches, things like that, it's going
mm-hmm.
to look like everybody's bad in the situation. I've had that happen in my career. I won't name names here on the internet, but you know who you are if you land on this podcast. You know who you are.
I mean,
Uh, and so I think of it more as like, oh, it's important for when a captain is selecting a first officer,
yes,
like we were saying earlier, know your strengths, your weaknesses, roll more towards your weaknesses, be open to hearing people and things like that. And I just don't think Jellicoe and Riker complemented each other and were ever like a good pair. Like it just didn't scream to me that like Riker was doing anything that different from what he would do. It's just now he's doing it um, for a captain that basically has his same strengths. you
so
know.
so here's my issue with Jellicoe, and
Okay.
I don't feel like Steve Shives touched on this. Jellicoe just came in and was just like, "I'm changing everything," like with a like broad with like stroke, like I'm changing this, I'm changing this, I'm changing this, but not giving full reasoning behind it. It's
Terrible
just
communicator.
terrible, terrible, and this is not me saying this that he's not a good captain because I do feel like he was a good captain for that particular situation that they were going through with the Cardassians, and he knew how to handle the Cardassians. He knew how to, yeah, you heard the slip up there. Kardashians.
I mean,
Uh,
Chloe was going off, and
he,
he was
he
able to take care of it.
he knew how to handle the Cardassians, and knew the best way to tackle them. And with the Enterprise being the flagship of the of the Federation, yes, they needed to show the flag in this particular situation, but they also needed a captain that would be able to handle this particular type of situation. So I don't disagree with that decision. What the Admiral did to put Captain Picard onto that special team that went after the the Thor.
Hmm.
What was it? Thoron particles that they were picking up.
Yeah, something about that because they could make a weapon that had been banned. I can't remember the name of
Yes,
it, and it's banned because it eats subspace or something like that. But yeah, I
yes.
can't. I think Thoron is right, but you know,
I do believe
if
that's
I had to
right
be
with the.
tested on it, I wouldn't totally know, to be honest with you.
I mean, and granted, from that particular episode, that's where we got like one of the greatest Picard quotes of all time.
There are four lights.
I mean, come on, like how is that not the greatest quote from Captain Picard ever? I'm just
I had
saying.
forgotten for a second that you do this every episode, and we had just
Every episode, I am shoehorning it in some way,
you
somehow.
didn't
However,
shoehorn it in this
however,
time. This is the most
that one was more
natural.
organic. Yeah.
Yeah, we were actually talking about the episode where it happened, so it fits. Um, I think I think this is the fault of the writers more than anything else because they make it clear it's an urgent situation,
Yes.
but they don't. They need to in the script a couple more times mention that nobody knows if Jellicoe is temporary or permanent because Starfleet doesn't tell them.
Yeah,
And so
but
no one quite knows how to react because they come in and are like, Jellicoe's going to be captain for 2 weeks while we resolve this. Just do what he says. And then Riker does what he does. It's kind of like, hey, man, like, we all know it's temporary and you're not getting along with him, but you need to chill. But instead, they leave it open ended
mm-hmm,
on whether Jellicoe's just the captain now. So Riker has no idea, like, do I need to make a stand here because he's not communicating very well, or
mm-hmm,
do I just need to accept that I only got 10 more days of this and then Picard's going to be back or something like that? Like I think they try to communicate in the episode, but not very well, that it's unclear how anyone should be reacting to Jellicoe because they don't know if he's the captain or if he's just the substitute teacher. But they only like mention it like for 2 seconds at
mm-hmm.
like the swearing in ceremony or the transfer ceremony or whatever. Um, and I think that makes everything else make a little less sense for how the whole crew's like, yeah, we don't like this MF, you know?
Well, let's be real. Let's be real with this. The writers did this as a point of contention for Riker's character. And
Yeah.
they wanted some type of conflict within the episode that was more of a B plot than not the A plot dealing with the Cardassians. So that's what they wrote in. And
Right.
I agree with you that that's more of a fault of the the writers because like I guess it's hard for me to believe in the 24th century of an enlightened species of someone coming in taking command and not given the time to like sit down with the first officer and be like, hey, this is the type of person that I am. I don't know how long I'm gonna be in command. This could be a short term. This could be something long term. But I want to let you know exactly the type of way that I captain. I've read your file. I understand the type of person you are from your file, but I haven't seen that face to face. This is how I am. Blah, 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 blah. How do you feel about that? And then get his feedback from that and be like, okay, I understand your feedback and how you would feel about that, but the reason why I am like that is because of this. Because so it gives like that level of understanding between the two of like I'm not doing this just because I'm being lack for a better term a DICK. So I'm I'm not just coming in being a straight asshole here. I'm doing this for a reason. There is a reasoning behind what I'm doing. And I used to tell my people this all the time. There are methods to my madness. I will do some things that you probably will think, why the hell is he doing that? That doesn't make sense. But then you will see after a while, like when it comes to fruition, oh, that's why he did that. Oh, that makes sense. And I will always tell them in those situations, there are methods to my madness. It looks wrong right now. Trust me, it's going to make perfect sense in the future.
Yep. And this is where um, we're going to be teasing yet again another future episode. Makes total sense. The Starfleet is quasi-military, and I think our lack of military experience between us, where if we had like maybe even some of my family members, some of your other family members that have been in the military, might say like, "Hey, sometimes the job is you just
You know,
STFU and go do what your commanding officer told you to do."
that is true. That is true. And sometimes that is the case. I I just feel like where Star Trek was in this particular situation, like they're more enlightened. They're more enlightened people to be able to have these particular conversations and for
Yeah,
it to not be
but
as rigid as it is.
yeah, and I'm not disagreeing with you at all, but I do get that people will still be people. Um, Assuming we make it through this trade war, people will still be people in the 24th century. And maybe
Hilarious.
like he's not just the best communicator. Sorry, I didn't mean to make it political, everybody. Well, yeah,
Hilarious.
whatever. I know Star Trek isn't political, but
Star Trek is 100% not political. I'm being very facetious when I'm saying this. I don't want anybody to say in the
hey,
comments, well, he just said it's not political. No, I'm being very facetious. If you don't know what facetious is, go look it up. But
nah, I'm being serious. Name one episode that was political. No, I'm joking. I'm sorry, I could. I barely got through that punchline.
well,
Well, you got the first episode of Star Trek ever,
you
and
know,
sometime in the future, the last episode of Star Trek ever. In between are all the episodes that are political. So,
I mean, we can spend like 10 plus hours on what political episodes are in Star Trek.
yeah, but nothing that happened in that episode with the lack of communication. Which, to your point, I do hope 21st century humans have locked in on what we call soft skills in business to the point where it's like, yeah, a 10-minute conversation is going to make the next 2 weeks much clearer
You
and we can
know,
avoid some conflict here. I hope it's like that, but I also have this like, man, people are people there. I don't know. I don't know if that's like above what, if that level of smooth communication. Because honestly, now that we're talking about it, that's how they pictured, you're exactly right. That's how they pictured the Enterprise crew at the beginning, and
mm-hmm.
Gene Roddenberry was literally like, "Yeah, the people can't have conflict with each other on a like they can't have like disagreements or misunderstandings or anything like that because we're going to evolve past that as people." And the writers of the show were like, "How am I supposed to write an episode where there's no
Where
conflict
there's no
between the main
conflict. Yeah.
characters?" Yeah, so it's a bit of a writing concession there. I think to make the conflict work during the episode, my point was that you just have to keep making it a mystery on whether Jellicoe's forever and he's not communicating and everything you just said, or it's temporary because
Yeah.
either way resolves the conflict.
Sorry. Sorry. My wife just came home, so they're like excited. Uh,
They're agreeing with me, Dante.
obviously.
Yeah.
Obviously. No, and I completely agree with you on that. I understand why they did it. I do.
Yeah.
But I do feel like it could have been done in a more organic way that made sense
Yeah.
for the era that they were in with Star Trek because um, I feel like you could still have that conversation in the beginning between the new captain and first officer saying like I'm like this da 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 how you feel about this da 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 and still have conflict between them later on.
Yep. Yep. And it
'Cause-
still not work out. Yeah.
Exactly, because it'd just be like I'm not at all used to this. Even though he told me that this type of person I am, I'm not at all used to this, and I feel like you're doing this wrong.
Yeah. A lot of it is, and I think Shive sits on this in his video from years and years ago. A lot of this is how much do we like Picard better than Jellicoe, which all of us is like a lot.
A lot,
You
yeah.
know, probably to a person. I think more than like how Riker axe to him. Because if anyone's actually saying that, like, this is a moment where he wasn't being a good first officer, I think you're missing the criteria that we've been laying
Yes.
out for what makes a good. He's being a good first officer. He's just not a good first officer for Jellicoe.
He
And if
was
Jellicoe had
voicing his
been,
opinions. He was now.
and he wasn't really being disrespectful.
Uh, I would say
He
he
was
would
being
be in one particular situation.
no, because okay, the reason why I'm going to say he wasn't, if we're
Okay.
thinking of the same thing, is because the Kardashians, because Chloe and Kim had left the room before he got that disrespectful in front of him. He was disrespectful because it was slightly disrespectful because Deanna is there when he's like really going in on Jellicoe, but like she's also a senior officer, so like and the ship's counselor, so it's like
Oh,
it's not like she's not privy to the conflict, but he didn't weaken him in front of like what needed to be done. He waited until like we were basically behind closed doors and then crossed the line,
okay.
which to
O-
me isn't
Okay, not that part.
okay.
Not that part. I don't feel like he was, because I feel like he was actually doing his duty as a first officer in that particular situation to push back onto the captain in the direction that he was going with this, because he just didn't agree with the direction that he was going, and that comes from Riker's lack of experience with the Cardassians and not understanding the type of people that they are, and but Jellicoe
Mm-hmm.
knew that he had to tackle the Cardassians this particular way. Uh, but also, you can throw that as a particular instance where he didn't have a full blown conversation with Riker to say, these are the Cardassians. They're like this. I understand you've dealt with them before. However, you haven't dealt with them along the same lines that I have. I've done. I've had this particular mission with them. I had this particular mission with them. I had this situation that occurred. Da 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 da. I've learned that they are this, and this. So you have to handle them, especially in this particular type of situation that we're going into. You have to handle them this way, or this way. So I understand you may not like some of the direction that I may go with this, but there is a reason why I'm doing this. And that's why I feel like Jellicoe was not a good captain, because he didn't explain to at least he doesn't have to explain to the entire crew, but at least to the next person in command, that I'm doing this because of this reason, and I'm probably going to tackle this particular way. So that's why I disagree with Steve Chives on. Yes,
Yeah, it's
right.
in
Go ahead.
no, you go ahead and finish up.
No, I'm saying, like, yes, Riker was an a hole on some of the things that he dealt with, but I still feel like the way that he came back at him was the typical way that he normally would, and he would have definitely did that with Captain Picard.
Yeah, nothing in this episode has ever made me think that Riker
Sucked.
A wouldn't be yeah exactly A wouldn't be a great first officer for a ton of captains. I just think you ran into the captain that wasn't. I don't know if Jellicoe is a bad captain. I don't know if I
He's
will
not. He's
go as
not.
far to say that. It's I will freely admit that some effective communication would have made the whole situation better, and it is a writing convenience to have just not done. They do it in. I haven't seen a rom com in a long time, as a byproduct of being single, apparently. But they do it in rom coms all the time, from what I remember, which is like the whole plot could be resolved in like a 2 minute conversation
Conversation.
between
Yeah. Yeah.
between. But you keep it going to keep the drama going, and I think the geez, I don't know which one is the A story in this one. The drama of Picard being captured, which I assume is the A story, like gives you that sense of like, oh, things of consequence are happening in this episode. And so I think they just underinvested a little bit in the Riker Jellicoe conflict, which has many interesting aspects to it because it's basically the reverse of the Shelby Riker conflict,
Mm-hmm.
just like on like different
Mm-hmm.
ends of the spectrum for him. So it's an interesting
Mm-hmm.
place for the character to be. I wish they had been able to do a little bit more with it. Yeah, basically, if it was a serialized show as opposed to episodic, and this was like a 3 or 4 parter, I think this whole storyline would have been far more interesting. But no,
Yeah.
I don't even think we're disagreeing with each other. I think we're on the same
Yeah.
page that like this is not an instance of Riker being a bad first officer. He was being a good first officer.
Well,
Jellicoe was doing some stuff
but
that
going back to what I was saying though, like the one time that I really would say that he was being a terrible first officer was the whole shift change. Because and I'm trying to remember completely. I
yeah,
believe they were
he
on
just
a
didn't do it.
3 rotational shift change, but Jellicoe wanted to go to a 4
Right.
rotational shift change, and he just didn't do it. And he tried to
Mm-hmm.
give like some explanation, and Jellicoe was just like, "Oh my god, this guy!" Like,
That's
dude,
getting off on the wrong foot for sure.
it is. I told you to do a thing, you didn't do it. Regardless of whether you, I feel like that was one of those situations where, regardless of whether you agreed with it or not, you need to follow through with it. Because, like, how big of a change would that be? Yeah, it would be. It would be a change to how things are ran on the Enterprise, but in the grand scheme of things, would this have been so much of a change to where it would disrupt the crew of the Enterprise? I
Yeah.
don't believe it would.
Like either make the change or
Talk to
fight
your
about it.
damn captain about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Don't not do it and
like
not say anything. Like
he could at least drew up the plan of doing it. Like, okay, I'll move this person to this. All right, so the fourth shift. All right, bring it to the captain. Okay, so I have the 4 rotational shift change set up. However, I have some concerns about said shift change, and then voice said concerns.
yeah, yeah. Well, that is kind of the thing about this episode. They both could have invested in the relationship building between them, regardless of whether you think it's permanent or not, a little bit more. So,
Yeah, but there's
I
one
don't know.
part of this that I have to agree with Steve Chaz on, and this is the excellent point that he made was that they how the writers wrote this, they were trying to make it out to be that Riker was in the right, and he
They do.
wasn't.
Well, that's
He
because they make Jellicoe like extremely arrogant, and so it's easier to, which speaks to some of the communications issues, right? They try to make him look extremely arrogant, so you just naturally side with Riker,
mm-hmm,
who you've seen over the years deal with the amount of arrogance and confidence he's had, and
mm-hmm.
get more judgment and all that stuff. So he's like naturally positioned. But you're right, he's not right to not do it. Like you gotta do something with it, even if your plan is to not do it.
Yeah,
You gotta at least tell the captain why you're not gonna follow their orders, which you can do as a first officer. You have
there.
like a special station to do that, and if the captain's like, "Do it, or I'm gonna relieve you of duty," then you can do it or not do it, right? But like, yeah, that is a good point. I wonder. I can't remember. I haven't seen the episode in
Mm-hmm.
years now, but I can't remember. There was a conversation he had with Geordi where Geordi's like, "Man, he's really running us ragged," and Riker's like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna end up talking to him about it. I'm just like trying to get to it." So they almost make it seem like the reason why he doesn't do it is because he's taking his sweet time to figure out how to influence the captain on not doing it. I
But
think
see,
is like the in-episode justification, but even then, that's terrible.
But see, like, and this is why I would say in this particular type of situation that they both were at fault. This is
Yeah,
not one person was at fault and the other person was right. No, they both were at fault because I'm if I'm coming on to a new ship to captain and I didn't pick any of the crew, nor do I have the ability to change the crew. Like, it's literally you're being thrown into the fray with a crew that's already been working together for X amount of years. One of the very first things I'm going to do is talk to just about everyone, depending on the time frame, like the timing and everything, because I understand this particular episode, like they're talking about something
yeah,
that's
we're in a
very,
hurry.
like, in a hurry. So in this particular situation, it's like I don't have enough time to talk to everybody. but at least talk to the one person that you know has the ear of the crew,
Right.
which is Commander Riker, and just talk to him. 10 minutes, at least 10 minutes to
I mean,
talk
it
about
ultimately.
the type of person he is. Like, am I
It
wrong on
ultimately.
this?
No, no. I think it. I think the way they intended to write it, what they were trying to do, trying to make Riker sympathetic, they just they needed to accept as writers, and maybe because they were still living in the legacy of Gene. I think Gene was no longer with us
Yeah, I
um,
think he had passed
by
by
the
this
time.
time.
Yeah, um, but at some point, you just have to admit that. And sorry, any kids who have gotten through the cursing and all this conversation yet. Sometimes adults just don't get along. Not every adult in the world is going to get along with another adult. It doesn't matter how good you are, committed you are to the mission, how much on the same page you should be. You're just not going to get along. And I think the writer should have just written this as like, these are two dudes at the top of their game, don't
Mm-hmm.
like each other.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what's going to happen as a result because
And that's
ultimately
perfectly
Riker didn't
fine.
follow the order because he didn't like Jellicoe, and Jellicoe relieved him of duty because he didn't like Riker. And like, yeah, two people in Starfleet found each other and they just aren't ever going to be friends no matter what happens, no matter how many enemies they defeat together. They just aren't going to like each other, and that's the way it should have been written in my opinion.
And you still could have had the situation where they ultimately had the full fallout, even though Jellicoe told him in the beginning, "This is the type of captain I am." They still could have had that same situation where they were in full throes of the issue with the Cardassians, and Riker just did not agree how he was handling it. You could
Yeah.
still have that, and still, and in my opinion, really truly, in that situation, it would have been more organic too, because it would have
Mm-hmm.
been, even though I understand that this is the way you think, I still don't agree with it. It's
Yeah.
it it's showing that Riker understands the type of person that this captain is, but feels like this could be handled totally different because of his level of experience.
Yeah. And ultimately, at the end of the day, Jellicoe succeeds with the
He
Cardassians
does.
and saves Captain Picard and
He
was
does.
not really in the wrong in what he did.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the execution, the conflict with Riker, all that stuff. But, if
And that could have been
there's no.
Riker's. That could have been the character for Riker learning that not everything that a person does, not everything that a captain does, will be considered right by the crew. But that doesn't
Yeah,
necessarily mean that he's wrong.
yeah. And honestly, um, I've had bosses that I don't like. And if y'all stumble on this chat, you know who you are. You know who you are. Don't even if you're asking yourself, am I the boss that Patrick didn't like? Yes. Okay. The bosses that I like know who they are. The bosses that I don't like might be wondering. So if you're wondering, but that being said,
You just
bosses that I don't like,
you're just giving me additional stuff to edit out later, aren't you?
I don't care if you keep that in. They know who they are.
Well,
if
go ahead.
even if you get even if you get a boss you don't like I've had in my career, I still have learned from them. I have learned things, even if I felt
Yes.
like I learned what not to
Yes.
do, even if I learned
Yes.
what to do. Going through that experience, even though I wouldn't
Yes.
recommend it, going through that experience added to my collective experience to like, okay, well, when I'm the boss, I'm not going to do that. But
Yes.
sometimes those but sometimes there are times where I'm like, oh, but you know what? The way they handled that, I'm actually stealing that. That I'm gonna put that in my pocket because I don't like them, but that was effective, and I need to
Mm-hmm.
remember that that's a way to get things done. And you're right, Riker could have. It could have been written a little bit more neutrally to not make Jellicoe the bad guy, and Riker could have gone on a great arc
A
in
great
these two
character
episodes.
development arc. Not to say that TNG didn't do good at developing the characters, they did. But I feel
Yeah,
like that was a missed opportunity for them.
it was. It was. But to the first officer premise of the episode, it doesn't impact Riker's greatness at all
It doesn't.
as a first
It
officer.
does not. It does not.
And I never thought he was for a moment, even though him disobeying a direct order is, without explaining it to his captain what's going on, is a black mark on his record. Yeah, that is a black mark on his record. It does not make me hesitate making him number two. Because who else am I going to make number two? Chakotay? No. So
that's a good segue into the first officers that we think are not the greatest. But before going that direction, I do want to point out, and I'll let you speak on what you're going to say too. That was a good point that you pointed out, because that's one of the main things that I told my people. Anybody that was underneath me, I would tell them that there are going to be things that you like that I do, and there are probably going to be things that you don't like that I do. Take that as a learning experience, because there's a good number of y'all that probably will become a manager at some point. So take what I do and remember the things that I do well, and remember the things that I don't do well, because you may look at that and be like, you know what, I may want to implement that. And then there's other things which you'll be like, yeah, I don't like that. I may not want to implement that. And that's perfectly fine, because I don't expect for you all, when y'all become managers, to be like me. I expect for y'all to be like you, but to take some of the things that I've taught you and apply them.
Yep, absolutely. It's good stuff. I'm gonna give you like an editing break here for a second.
Okay.
Okay. Side note: anyone watching this live is gonna be like, "What?" Side note: I have my meal delivery coming in the next few minutes, so we're probably gonna have to like take a quick break for me to go down there and get it. They were supposed to be here like 4 hours ago, but they were obviously late. So I didn't want to like let them get here and then I have to be like, oh, I got to go right now. So yeah, edit all this out when we talk about it. But like in about 5 or 10 minutes, I'm probably gonna have to run downstairs and get my meals for the week.
Perfectly fine.
Okay. Probably a good time to like go use the bathroom and things like that, because I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of.
We have,
this first officer
which is crazy, because we're an hour and 30 minutes in. So
we're just to Riker and we're 90 minutes in.
Yes. Granted, we spent a lot on Riker, but like I expected that, because TNG is the era of Star Trek that like purely mostly affected our outlook of how Star Trek is.
Right.
Like that TNG is 100% what brought me into Star Trek. Like I said, I did watch the original series when I was younger, but the very first episode of Star Trek that I remember was a TNG episode.
Oh yeah, and I've talked about this on the chat too. Like my mom and sister would watch TNG, and I got to stay up late and watch it with them. So like I love the show, even though I was like a little kid and could barely understand what was going on.
What the hell is going on? Yeah.
Yeah, and so yeah, I mean it's probably the biggest reason why I haven't made it all the way through TOS, because my first introduction was TNG, and I'm like, and I know the older heads, I should say, Star Trek fans might find that blasphemous. Like the ones who started on TOS be like, no, TNG was the upstart, they didn't even do it right kind of thing. But it's like, hey, it worked. Just like how I think Discovery, Prodigy, Strange New Worlds is working right now. Like whatever your entry point is, I ain't gonna hate on it. Unless it's Voyager.
Yeah, just as long as you come into this world, I don't care where you came in at it. It could have been Star Trek Picard. As much as I hate that series,
it's gonna come up later.
It could have been that, but the fact that even if that was your entry point into it, that made you want to learn more about Star Trek in this world, I would not knock that.
Yeah. And speaking of Star Trek Picard, as much as you hate it,
go ahead.
I think Seven was a great first officer. And I don't know how you want to handle that in this episode. But she did her thing and got promoted by someone that didn't like her as a first officer. and I don't know where she's gonna fall in your rankings, but she's not gonna be in the bad first officer category. So whoever we're
Uh,
about to talk to next as
okay,
a great first officer, we're gonna have to deal with it.
okay. I'm I'm conflicted here. Um, in two reasons why, and it's not because it's just Star Trek Picard. Um, one of the areas that I would say this in, like what was the name of his of her captain again?
I'm
Um,
gonna look it up. You
I
keep
can't,
talking
I
because I
can't
can't
think
remember his
about it.
name either.
Yeah, but he
He
in
was
the
an interesting character
he was a
too, but
very interesting character, and I really truly liked how they wrote him. I
hmm
truly do. Because in the beginning you were just like he is, for
Shaw,
lack of a better term, an asshole.
yeah,
Uh, it's like he's unmoving in his idea about a person, and he's just locked in. But there's a reason why he's like that.
hmm
And
Captain Liam Shaw,
Liam
that's his
Shaw,
name.
Captain Shaw, you're right. So when they actually had the episode where he talked about his past and what occurred, it was
Yeah,
like, oh, holy crap! Like you've been holding on to a lot of trauma here. I can
hmm
understand why you would think or be that way in this particular instance. However, comma, um, the fact that Seven of Nine had to deal with his BS because of his bigotry, because of the stuff that happened in his past. That's the part that I was just like,
but
it's not a 24th century enlightened moment.
but
Mm-hmm.
he did the right thing at the end of the day. He recognized the
He
talent
did.
objectively, knew that she should have been a captain, dismissed her background from being a Borg and what they call it, the thing they made up for season one, the Fenris Raiders or whatever. I don't
Yeah.
know. Whatever that was. We'll never talk about it again in Star Trek. He looked past all of that and absolutely gave like, hey, you know what? Not my cup of tea, but absolutely should be a captain in charge of a very important ship somewhere because she's got all the things that you want. And I don't know. I feel like even, and I just spoke to all my bad bosses. I feel like even if you're a bad boss, if you can still recognize that this person should proceed in the world, even if you don't like them, I think that is like maybe not 24th century enlightenment, but it's beyond what we have now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That doesn't exist in the world right now because if your boss don't like you, they're never gonna set you up for promotion. But he's like, I don't like anything about her. She should be a captain because
And
she's that good.
wouldn't even call her Seven. He always kept calling her by her human
Hanson, yeah.
name, Annika Hansen, um, which was totally disrespectful because she like
Wanted to be called Seven.
her
Yeah.
name that she said that she wanted to be named Seven. Um,
Yeah.
go ahead.
But you see, even in the brief episodes we get, she's brave. She has good judgment. She has empathy, which add that to the list. Um, she has empathy. She's relating to her crew, which even Una, who we'll get to at some point,
Mm-hmm.
um, because even though he doesn't call her Seven, I think it's what LaForge's daughter calls
Yeah,
her Commander Seven.
yeah.
So she relates
Endearingly
to her
too.
crew. Yeah,
Endearingly, very endearingly.
yeah. So like people are comfortable bringing her stuff. She's managing the ship. She obviously can take over and be captain. Like much like how Seven of Nine is in Voyager and in Picard and wherever else she's going to show up. Hopefully, they listen to us and make a show.
Oh, they need to. They need. We do need a Captain Seven series. I agree with that.
We need it. We're in a trade war, y'all. Give us this show.
Granted,
Like, make
granted,
it, please.
Raffi as the first officer is not like everybody's cup of tea, and I understand the level of hatred for the Raffi character. I
I
truly
didn't know
do.
there was hatred about it.
Oh,
This is news to me.
there is hatred with the Raffi character. You don't
Why?
know about this?
No, I've missed this.
Oh,
Why do they not like her?
she,
Michelle Hurd's a great actress.
no, that's the crazy thing. The actress is perfect. Like I've never seen her in a terrible role at all. Like
Yeah,
she is such a great actress. I feel like the writing for Rappy was just way too. I felt like they kept hitting the emotional notes way too much when it came to Rappy's character, and I think that was to her detriment. Not to
mm,
say that like the character didn't deserve emotional parts because it was a character who was once a great Starfleet officer that had a bad turnaround, ended up getting into some type of drugs that affected
right.
her.
Drugs and alcohol. Yeah,
Yeah, and made her lose her husband, along with that her
son.
child. So like I get that part of it, but I felt like they leaned way too much into the emotional drama with this particular character, and that's where a lot of critics would say that this character wasn't that great,
Mm, okay.
and
Yeah,
wasn't good until the third season when Worf was the person that she was interacting with.
yeah. One of the things you should clip in the future is Worf introducing his titles to Raffi. When he goes from like son of Moog, unaliver of Gowron, like all that stuff. That was better than anything Khaleesi did on Game of Thrones when he was listing off
Oh,
his
his
titles.
full titles and everything.
Yeah.
By this point, he did have a shit ton of titles. So
I'm like, dang gum. I kind of forgot what Worf had done.
that's a good point.
He did do all that.
That's a good
Um,
point. So, like,
it's
but
interesting because
granted, a Captain Seven uh, series would possibly put Raffi into a better light.
yes, because I'm nerdy enough that I read the lead-in comic to Picard season one,
Mm-hmm.
where she is a first officer to Picard
Mm-hmm.
on I think the ship's called the Odyssey. Maybe I'm sure someone's going to check me on that.
That sounds about right
And
because that's in Star Trek Online. But keep going.
okay. And yeah, I mean, that comic is much to do about nothing. To be honest with you, nothing happens in it, and should have warned me
Mm-hmm.
about what was going to happen in
That's
that
funny.
first season of Picard.
That's funny.
But there's nothing that she does. She's enthusiastic. She wants to complete the mission. She's learning from the captain. Like, checks a lot of boxes, a lot of limited boxes as a first officer in that. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm interested in seeing how her character can develop because honestly, if you're a character in these first two seasons of Picard, like we don't know you that well.
Yeah,
like
because
we don't know you that well.
they didn't do a good job of really fleshing out the characters, and the characters that I feel like that they did flesh out, they kind of threw them to a side come the third season.
Yeah, because shoot, who did Orla Brady play? She was the
The
female Romulan,
oh yeah, yeah,
Picard's love interest.
yeah,
Um,
that would have
yeah, they
been an
just
excellent character to continue have throughout the series. It made so much sense.
and instead they tried to tease that like maybe Picard and Beverly were going to get back together, which didn't need to happen.
Yeah, but
Like
you can add conflict there by having
yeah,
his current love interest meet the past love interest that he just so happened to have a son with that he knew nothing about. You know how much drama can be written just
but
from
hey,
that?
if you're a Picard writer, you're not reaching for drama. I'm not sure what you're reaching for. It ain't drama.
I'm just,
Yeah, so
I'm just like, there are tons of, and well, actually, I'm actually going to have a different episode later where we talk about things they could have done to make this particular series better.
Yeah, I'm not rewatching any of it
Oh,
outside of season
I
three.
am not
That's
rewatching.
gonna be right off the dome, off of like some googling. Like I'm
Hmm.
not
I'll
not gonna
read
do it.
synopsis of season 1 and 2, but I am
Yeah.
not rewatching it. Season 3, oh yeah, I will rewatch that all day long. Season 3 most definitely is in the rotation.
hmm
1 and 2, however, no, it did not happen. I am not watching it. I don't care what people think of it. It and I sound like the people who hate Discovery right now. Now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, we might have to pull back a little bit. That's why earlier I was like, well, they did do their best. Oh, hey, good time to pause. They just got here.
Okay, so we're going to take a break, y'all. We'll be back soon to point out the rest of the first officers that were great and not so great. All right. All right, Unpopular Explorers, we are back from taking our necessary break.
Because we love first officers,
To be
and
honest,
apparently we could talk about them for 4 straight days if we had to.
when we were talking about which episode we were going to do this week, I truly was thinking in my head, man, that first officer episode is going to be like really short. But we spent almost an hour talking about Riker by himself. So I was wrong. I was wrong. Is the best way of saying this. I was
I was
completely and
wrong
totally
too.
wrong.
No, I was wrong right with you because I was on the other chat with our other friends being like, this first officer episode, it's better than the a future episode where we talk about useless characters. And yeah, I think I totally underestimated how much we could talk about first officers
because
here. So
because I know I said it earlier in the episode, but I kind of want to get to the point where we talk about uh, first officers that weren't that great, but also at the same time when I go back through the list, there's not that many of those. Like, because practically almost every first officer was great for their captain. Like, for instance, I want to discuss Kira when it comes to
hmm
Cisco in DS9. And granted, like Cisco didn't come in as a captain; he was a commander, but he was the commanding officer
devastating
for.
error by that
Uh,
show running team. But yeah,
it was, but I understood what they were trying to do there,
right.
and and they were right. The commanding officer of a star base uh, doesn't necessarily have to hold the uh, title of captain. They
But it's
can
your
be a
first
commander.
black lead
I
ever.
know, and there could be
Our
a
second black
talk
lead
that we
had to
could
work up from
have.
commander as well.
Exactly.
But
I was just about to say that there could be a discussion that we could have as to why every black lead cannot come out to be captain at at season 1, episode 1 of the series.
due to
So,
the length of this episode, I will not expand on that right now. But I'm ready to go. We need to make sure that's on the list because I
I'm
have
adding that
thoughts.
to the list. I'm adding that to the list. That's
I have
actually a
thoughts.
good introspective to talk about. However, so Kira is an interesting character to pair with
Yeah, because
Cisco.
she's not in Starfleet.
Exactly, exactly. But the title that she holds in the Bajoran militia, which is major, equates kind of to I believe at this point it will be lieutenant commander.
When she starts the series,
Yeah,
because when
because when
she
she starts the series, because later on she becomes, what is it, Commodore? Or
no, there's an episode where she has to go to Cardassia.
no, no,
Um,
no. Yeah, when they give her a commission, yes,
yeah, and she's
yeah,
a full blown commander.
yeah, yeah. They give her that commission with the rank that she holds in the Bajoran militia at that point. At that point, it wasn't major. She had been promoted.
Oh, I missed that. Okay, I didn't
Yeah,
know that.
and I
Okay.
can't remember the title that is. Um, that's why I think the title of major equates to more of lieutenant commander. And the
Okay.
reason why they had to give her that commendation was because she was going to help the Cardassians that defected to their government, and a lot of those Cardassians would not be happy that a Bajoran was almost
Yeah.
teaching and commanding them.
Well, not just a Bajoran, but like a straight up, from their point of view, terrorist
Terrorists,
who
yeah.
probably unalived several of their
Yeah,
friends
yeah.
in battle. Yeah.
So to kind of soften that blow, they had to give her a Starfleet commission to pretty much show like, no, she is a representative of Starfleet
hmm
helping with this particular situation. So it just so happens she's Bajoran, but she is a commander within Starfleet and wore a full blown Starfleet uniform, which is the only time in the series that you ever saw her wear said uniform.
Yeah, and it was cool. I was I was totally fan baited into that moment where it's like, she's wearing a uniform. I think I stood up the first time I saw it because I like Major Kira.
Uh,
She's hardcore.
Major Kira, and this is why I think it's an interesting dynamic for Cisco, because Cisco himself was hardcore.
Yeah,
Cisco, he had his moments of like I care about the people that's under my command, which was such a good cross with this character. But for the most part, he was he was way more cutthroat and way more stern than Picard or even to that point
let's
Kirk.
let's face it. The realest MFs we've ever seen in Star Trek have all been on Deep Space Nine.
I
Like,
would have to agree.
like
I can't disagree with that statement.
we're gonna face down the Cardassians. We're gonna face down the Dominion. Oh, you think the Borg is bad? The Dominion have a political agenda. we have to beat an ideology out here, and we have to beat space Nazis. Like,
I mean,
so,
I know some people going to say, "Oh, the reason why you're saying this is because Cisco is black," but like
and
Cisco
yes,
is
no, I'm joking.
my top favorite captain in like all of Star Trek. He just
So,
is. And granted, I'm going to say this also. Um, Captain Pike, Ensign Mount's portrayal of Captain Pike is like granted probably going to be either number two or even battle Cisco for number one
yeah,
in my
yeah,
eyes.
yeah. I think that's fair. So, fun fact.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much people believe in Myers Briggs anymore. Do they use that at your place of work, at your
No,
workplace?
we do not.
Okay. We used Myers Briggs at a couple of places that I worked, and my Myers Briggs lines up
Well,
with what.
before you say that, like give a brief understanding of how what Myers Briggs is
Oh, so
for those that don't know.
it's a widely used but kind of debated personality
Mm-hmm.
categorization system where basically you take a quiz and it breaks you into one of like 16 categories,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not going to remember every single one of them, which is funny because it's only 8 things, but you're like it's like extrovert, invert, intuitive or sensing, thinking or feeling, and then judging or perceiving. Oh, I did
Mm-hmm.
remember it. And your combination of those 4 letters basically explains what your personality is like in
Yeah.
certain situations. And for me, I've only taken it in a work context. So I've taken it and I've gotten ENTJ is what they refer to it
Mm-hmm.
as extroverted, intuitive, thinking, and judging. And it's a slightly rare personality type, whatever that means. Speaking of one of the bad bosses, I had one of the bad bosses who took this and was like, I have an ultra rare personality type. Doesn't that make me great? I'm like, no.
No.
But anywho,
Sorry about your
setting
bubble,
that
but
aside.
no.
Yeah. Setting that aside. So you can use this. The point of the tool is to understand how your coworkers take in and think about information and
Mm-hmm.
why they say things
Mm-hmm.
and how you do it as well. And you can find where natural points of conflict are and work around it, basically. Like if, for example, if you're more feeling and I'm more thinking, then we can end up in a Kirk and Spock situation,
Mm-hmm.
but we can make it a Kirk and Spock situation because we can label what's going on. It's like, okay, I can see why you would say something like that because you're an F and I'm a T and this is where we're going to conflict. Let's try to find a middle ground to proceed on. That's the point of the tool. And it's weird because the one captain I've ever seen mapped onto Myers Briggs that has my personality type is Cisco.
Is Cisco?
Like, it's pretty much like, yeah, he's a ENTJ. And if you want an ENTJ captain, he's him. And so I'm kind of like, so I'm like you, where I'm like, man, there's a lot of captains I like, but I need to go work for him because I'm gonna be like a commander by.
It
I'm gonna come in. I'm gonna come in like lieutenant junior grade, but I'm gonna be a commander by the time I'm done serving
it's a
as a captain
certain
because we're gonna be.
level. It's a certain like type of person that he was during this whole series that he was a captain that you grew to love and understand, and he did have those instances where he gave you grace
Yeah,
and allowed you to also speak as well. But like one of my main, I think I pointed this out to you before. One of my main things that I loved about Cisco, and it was like during one episode when they were talking to Gul Dukat in like the beginning. I believe it's like either season one or season two. And he was talking to Gul Dukat about a particular situation, and Dr. Bashir interrupted the conversation they were having to ask a question. It was a apt question for the situation, and it was a question that totally needed to be answered. So it wasn't like he came out of turn and just asked like some terrible question. No, it
right.
was a good question. And but Cisco, after Gold got off the comms and he addressed that to the doctor, he addressed it in a way to say, basically, I'm not saying what you did was wrong. However, what you did was out of turn and disrespectful to me. But I do appreciate you for bringing it up. However, I don't appreciate how you brought it up.
Yeah, and going back to Myers Briggs, um, I have learned over the course of my career, which I'm in the middle of, despite
Mm-hmm.
the lack of midlife crisis at the moment. Maybe it'll hit me in like later, but I have learned that if you don't communicate well as an ENTJ, you basically
Mm-hmm.
end up like Jellicoe.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and like that's a
You know
great
what?
moment where like, yeah, go ahead.
No, no. I was about to say, you know what? That's actually a very good point, especially since how we just got through from talking about Jellicoe.
Yeah, yeah. And like that's where Cisco always had good command of everything because like I could tell like what he wanted to say, how he wanted to be, but like as that personality type, if me and him are like on the same wavelength, it's
Mm-hmm.
like I've had to invest so much in my communication skills and I still don't even get it right all the time
Mm-hmm.
right now because yeah, you basically get to a very rational, balanced, somewhat judgmental point of view very quickly. And if you don't take a step back and be like, okay, I need to actually walk people to this point,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and you just blurt it out, people just go like, hmm,
But
well, what? Why?
he did it so well. He
Hmm.
and,
It
and
takes
I'm
experience.
and I'm probably gonna butcher exactly what he said, but he basically said to the doctor, uh, "No, I truly appreciate you interrupting me during a conversation with the leader of the Cardassian government while I was talking to them." And the doctor was like, "Oh, oh," he realized his mistake at that point. He was just like, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." And he was like, "No, no, no, no. That was the highlight of my day. However, don't do it again." It was
Yeah,
so perfect. It was like you're saying to him, "Hey," you're pointing out the mistake that he made and getting him to realize said mistake. However, you did show within that what you said and what you brought up and how Golden Cot stammered with that question. So it was the perfect question to ask in that situation, and I probably
hmm,
would not have asked that question. It was a way of pointing that out, but not saying it directly. However,
yeah,
in the future, do not do that crap again.
Yeah, Cisco learned somewhere along the way, and I'm not saying I'm there myself, but I've had to
Uh-huh.
learn a similar lesson where it's like, instead of just saying, hey, don't ever talk to them when I'm talking
Yeah.
again, because that sends the wrong message,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, walk with me through this one.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
the right
Follow
thing to
me what
say
I was doing. Yeah.
to, yeah, to get that to work? And it's a much better way to be if Myers Briggs is accurate at all, which people don't, which people debate about. But it's a much better way to live as an ENTJ to be like, okay, the thing I want to say, I'm gonna take it like 10 steps back, and I'm gonna figure out what's the actual right thing to say. And to your point, you start to realize what you want to encourage in people. It actually kind of brings you closer together to the people around you because it's like,
Yes.
yeah, I want you to
I want you to be able to
do
voice your
that.
opinion. I'm not saying that
Yeah,
what you did was completely wrong in this situation. However, there should have been a better way of you being able to ask that question. Like what Dr. Bashir should have said in that moment was, "Excuse me, sir, can I ask Mister? Can I ask Goldacott a question?"
yeah,
And in that
and it's
situation, I do not see Cisco saying no. I would be like, "Yes, go right ahead." He would have probably been like, "Yes, go right ahead, doctor."
yeah,
Which
exactly.
and it wouldn't have caused that particular situation. And now that I'm thinking about it, it almost makes me want to, during my next rewatch, pay attention after that episode, how if the doctor did something like that, but
Oh,
in a
later,
different
yeah,
way. Because that would be a good character development, and it would be one of those like minor things that you don't pay attention to unless you like really pay attention to the previous episodes, and then seeing like, oh, he just switched up how he would have normally done it, because in the first one or two seasons the doctor was very
hmm
brash, always said what was on his mind, a lot of times spoke out of turn, and that was one of his flaws and what he had to
and the only
fix.
and the only reason why I'm about to do this
Uh-huh.
is just because we were just talking about the length of the episode. We'll do chief medical officers
We will.
another day, right?
We will. I was
We
just
gotta be
about to go
talking about
back.
Kira.
I know. I was just about to go back, but we're talking about Kira. I wanted to point that out with Cisco just to show like his demeanor and the type of captain that he was. Because
Yeah, I would have
Kira,
loved serving under him. To be honest with you,
would
like,
have loved it. Loved, even
hmm
though you were probably been in war times serving under him. But
yeah, it would
still,
not have been the scratch that. I would have liked serving under him. I think I would have loved serving under Pike, but like you said at the beginning, but yeah,
but but that's it.
learning hand to hand combat to go head to head with the Jim Hadar would have not been very fun.
It's a good correlation though to Kira though, and how because
Yeah,
Kira was extremely rough, but that's because she came from she wasn't always in a government type position. She wasn't always in a
she was
position
a
where she
freedom
had to.
fighter.
She was a freedom fighter. She was a
Yeah,
lack of a better term from the Cardassian side. She was a terrorist.
yeah. She's
She
like see target, blow up target.
yeah,
The only good Cardassian is a unalived Cardassian mentality
and
coming into this.
there was no like respect for the chain of command type thing. Yeah, okay, granted, yeah, to a certain degree there was, because you had your heroes in the Bajoran militia that were like the epitome, like they did some stuff that like really was magnificent to help them be liberated. So yeah, she did have respect for those that were considered legends, but for the
Hmm
most part, she still said what was on her mind. She still there was no can I speak freely, Captain here. No, it was just like, no, I'm just gonna say what the hell is on my mind. And you saw that from the like first few seasons in Deep
Yeah.
Space Nine.
Well, she was. I mean, I don't know a thing NSA about
Mm-hmm.
Terracell. else. I don't want to be administratively erred out of the
True,
country to El Salvador.
true.
So I don't know anything about this.
Just from what we know, just from what we've seen on TV,
Yeah,
basically.
exactly. But it seems like that is the culture. And Chakotay, another first officer that who knows we'll get to or not. We've been recording for a bit, but maybe we'll talk about him. He talked about the Maquis,
Hmm.
a little bit of like their spiritual successors, and in an episode of Voyager, like someone was complaining about like, well, we don't do things the Maquis way here anymore and things like that. And Chipotle, wow,
Chipotle,
okay,
that's hilarious.
hey, I gotta stop drinking. Chakotay got up and hit him in the face, right? Like like showing leadership and communicating, um, and expressing yourself in those different environments that aren't Starfleet, a exploration quasi-military organization, or things like that. It's just so different. Where it's like, oh yeah, I can see how this fit in because she probably interrupted the person in charge numerous times and took command whenever she wanted because everything was kind of chaotic for
Yeah,
them because it's just whatever it took, like it was with the Maquis. And yeah, seeing her learn that under Cisco is a fun part of the series that you don't pay attention to. Because at some point, she's just very much better at it.
but I'm glad you brought that up with Chakotay though, because um, this is the
Chipotle. Yep.
Chipotle. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up with him because this is the dynamic that I felt that they should have went with Voyager when writing the Chakotay character because they they made it to like Chakotay fell in line from from episode 2 really because episode 1 and 2 are like two parters. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so with no pushback or dissension there, when it should have been like Cisco and Kira, where there was like in the beginning time of like turmoil and back and forth between the two getting to know and understanding one another when and then
Mm-hmm.
them coming to a point where it's just like, oh, we're kind of the same person here, like really truly. The only
Mm-hmm.
difference is that Cisco is more of a measured, I like to call it a organized chaos is what I like to call it
Hmm.
because he can be brash and over the top if he needs to be, but it's very calculating. It's understanding the situation and what's needed for the moment. So
Yeah.
he tones it back when he needs to, and he's very understanding of it. It goes back to what I said in the beginning of a leader understanding their strengths and their weaknesses. I completely can say with beyond the shadow of a doubt that Cisco knows his strengths and knows his weaknesses because he showed it countless times through that series. And when he didn't know what a weakness was, when he understood what it was, he corrected it. Like the beginning episodes, being uh, upset with Picard and being the uh, one of the reasons why his wife was unalived.
Yeah.
But he ended up correcting that by the end of that two-parter and understanding that Captain Picard was not the main catalyst; he was used to
Also,
bring on said terror. Go ahead.
also, kind of the only way you can make it in the professional world as a ENTJ, from from what I learned from
Hmm.
taking that test and using that test, like you have to be super aware of it. Otherwise, a lot of the stuff you do is not going to come out
It's
right.
not gonna come out right. It's not. People gonna think that you're a hole or don't like you and won't get to even try to understand you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So
and Chakotay, for by that measure, I felt like Chakotay's character should have been written as more gung
yes.
ho ish than what he
Yeah.
was, like being from a militia type group.
He snapped back from being a Maquis raider,
Mm-hmm.
fly by the seat of your pants to fight the Cardassians person, to basically a picture perfect Starfleet
Starfleet officer.
officer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like honestly, this may be a controversial statement, but if you had to get like a standard issue Starfleet officer, like Chakotay would be high up on the list
Yeah.
because commitment to the mission, scientific exploration, like all that stuff, like check, check, check. To the
Yeah.
point where I think one of his, like, there was an episode where they were exploring, like, some people had, like, some telepathic race had, like, made them think about what it'd be like if they made it back to Earth. And he's like, full pardon and get to be a professor at the academy was, like, the thing he wanted. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he snapped out of, like, I was like, either he was barely a marquee, right? And was like, or he just, or the writers didn't do it right, which is
The writers
I
didn't
think
do it
most
right.
people's conclusion. Yeah,
That's what I have to say because, like, yeah, as far as with the other Maquis members, he was probably the most junior out of all of them. But because he held such a high rank within the Federation and knew Federation tactics very well, and by that measure how to deal with the Cardassians, he became like more of a high-ranking person within the Maquis to be the commander of his own cell. So
yeah.
I understand that fact. However, like you said, it
But
was
then he
too
punched
quick
that
of a
guy that
snatch
episode.
back. Yeah, and so, but that was the crazy thing. He had instances like that where it showed like, oh, oh, so we want to do this like we're Maquis again. Okay, all right, let's do this like we're Maquis. And then he punches him. Like,
Yeah,
how do you feel about that? You want to still do it like we're Maquis?
yeah. So like he was
It's,
like fully in it, but like not enough in it where like it just took like a day basically for him to be like, all right, I can be Janeway's first officer to unify the crews, no doubt, and I can do it.
mm-hmm.
To his credit, I mean, I'm not in love with the series, but he was a very good first officer. I
He
can't think of an
was.
instance
He was.
where I was like, Chakotay was not being a good first officer. Like, could command the ship during an emergency, like all that stuff.
And the times of
Almost,
conflict that they
almost fell in love
had,
with the captain a couple times. You know,
fell a couple of times. Practically fell in love with her. What are you-
they definitely did it.
it, it is believed in the Star Trek books that him in Seven and Nine was not an item. Like they completely wrote that out on the first book after them returning to Earth. Like they were just like, no, this is not happening. No, this makes
Yeah, we don't
absolutely
know who
no
came up with
sense.
this, but it makes no sense.
Seven and
The
Nine
only thing,
becomes like a one of a people that's like part of a think tank for the Federation, and Chakotay is promoted from commander to captain, and he's captain of the of Voyager, and then they start writing in the complications of how he feels about Admiral Janeway at that point.
gotcha. Yeah, I think, and I haven't watched season 2 of Prodigy, but I think they pick up on that because I know at
I
the end
haven't
of
watched
season
it
one,
too.
she's looking for
Mm-hmm.
Chakotay, and oddly enough, I think Jellicoe also shows up in season 2 of Prodigy.
Oh, really?
Um,
Interesting.
yeah, when I was looking him up, when I was putting like our little notes together,
Mm-hmm.
which by the way, he gave me too much credit for that. Like I did that like over a bourbon in a couple hours. Like we'll have much more research
Still,
done for other episodes.
still way more research than what I did. So I
I had
have
some
to give
free
you
time,
credit for that.
but yeah, I think they pick up on that because I think he is captain of Voyager A. So I don't know what Voyager A is. Um, and he goes missing, and Admiral Janeway, is looking for him because she doesn't want to
Mm-hmm.
lose Chakotay for no reason. And that's why there's like a second name on who's the first officer in Prodigy up there because it popped up in that, and I'm like, who is this dude? I don't know. I
Well,
don't know who he is, but
by that account, we can touch on the second person that's considered almost a first officer in Deep Space Nine, which is Worf. when he comes into play.
Now, he is the first officer of the Defiant at some
Yes.
point. Kira plays both roles, but at some point, he is the first officer of the Defiant. He's the first officer of the Defiant in the episode where they're chasing Eddington, and Cisco essentially like
Oh,
nukes the planet
yes. Thank you.
that they're on.
Thank you, Patrick, for bringing that up because it's one of my favorite quotes from Cisco that I am now tying in as a quote that I'll
Oh.
probably have to do every single episode from here on. And that is
You betrayed your uniform!
one of my favorite things because it was one of those things that's like, oh, Captain Cisco needs to become the villain, quote unquote, in this situation to get edited to come out and be the sacrificing hero. So he played into that
Hmm.
so well, which is where that
which,
quote came from, and I love it.
which, which, speaking again, love Myers Briggs, don't love Myers Briggs, having the same personality type. I'm like, I could see myself doing this. That's not, and I didn't know that when I first watched the episode, and I still was kind of like, I could see myself doing this.
and,
Hey, absolutely, we're gonna complete the mission here. What we
and
gotta do? Yeah, hit that button, Worf. And Worf looks at him for a second, like, you sure?
you sure about this? Like, yeah, and that was the crazy thing. And that's one of the main things that I want to touch on Worf being a first officer. Because by this point, he has already gone through all of TNG, including some of the movies, and now been with the Deep Space Nine crew for almost a year or two. So he's gotten multiple experiences by this point to become a very well-rounded commander, and not only that, first officer.
Mm-hmm.
So, so his backtracking on that command, the Cleon on the bridge of the Defiant, which the Defiant is a war class ship,
Yeah, the only Starfleet warship like ever.
ever. And you got the Cleon, who is a warrior race that their blood boils for battle. And even he was like, I'm sorry, sir, say what? I'm sorry, sir, you want me to do what now? Fire these torpedoes
Yeah,
on a planet that's going to make it uninhabitable for humans? Holy crap, this is even
that
beyond me.
that is simultaneously Worf's growth and being like, what?
What?
Okay. And also a commitment to how much Cisco is willing to do to complete a mission if someone doesn't like intervene. I
Yeah.
guess for lack of a
Yeah.
better word. It's what I said about ENTJs. Like we and myself earlier. Actually, I didn't even realize I was going to bring up that point. But it's like, yeah, sometimes we get a little too mission committed. Like,
But some people, a lot of people in this particular area, when they broke down this episode, said that Cisco committed a war crime, and I would argue somewhat because he didn't make the whole entire planet uninhabitable. He only made
yeah,
it uninhabitable for humans.
yeah. I don't
Cardassians
think.
could come to this planet and just settle, and they'll be fine with whatever they put into the air. Go
I'm
ahead.
fairly sure the way they set it up. I'd have to rewatch the episode, but like
Uh huh.
everyone who was on the planet at that time would live quite fine and well.
Yes.
Like I joked about nuking it, but that is strictly from a human being perspective. And there are places on this planet that we live on now where human beings can't go, but
That's
like
true.
with
Yeah,
and not live. So
that's true.
like I'm not sure if that even comes close to
And
being a war crime. To be honest
and
with you.
really, what brought Cisco to that point was the fact that Eddington and his Maquis crew did the same tactic, just to
Right.
another planet where it made it uninhabitable for Cardassians, but humans could settle there with no issue. So
Yeah.
in this situation, really, Cisco was balancing the scales there.
Yeah.
And so it's like, especially when you come back to negotiations with the Kardashians saying, hey, you know, yeah, the Maquis did this to this planet, but we did this to this planet. So this is the even swap and trade where we'll just take control of this planet, but we'll give you this planet.
And even then, it was calculated. It wasn't like he didn't do that thinking he was going to go just do this to like every planet. Like
Yeah,
he
yeah,
did that being like, this will be the thing that breaks Eddington, and I can put all this to an end.
yeah. And really, the only sacrifice is just this one planet because he knew he was going to break by the time he even said to do that to the second planet. And it really comes
And
down
strict,
to one of my favorite moments with the actor that plays Cisco, and how he brought in his inner William Shatner for
mm-hmm.
this particular role and overacted the crap out of this role.
It's a great couple episodes to watch.
Yeah,
Avery Johnson does his thing. Um, and that's the thing. Avery Johnson, I don't really know a lot about him as like a person,
yeah,
but it seems like his acting style, there is a certain amount of chaos that sits under this level of rationality, calculation, and things like that, where it's like, ooh, I don't know what he's going to do, but what he's going to do is going to absolutely achieve
yeah,
the mission for the
yeah.
day. So it's Cisco's always been an interesting mix of that.
So
Kira, in response, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, no, I was just about to say so. Like with saying that, like uh, I believe that the dynamic of D Space Nine having two first officers, I feel like I like it because both of them, even Worf being a being from a warrior race, having learned a lot from Picard and
Mm-hmm.
how to command, but still rough in the command area because he was just a tactical officer. He wasn't he wasn't in the command role with
Like
on
we
the
said
Enterprise.
earlier, Riker jammed up the promotion line.
Yeah, yeah, he did. That's very true. So, like having the two of them, Kira and Worf, almost to a certain degree, kind of the same type of mindset between the two of being
Yeah,
more
you're
gung
right.
ho-ish.
Hey, do they ever have a moment in the show where both of them are just like getting ractaginos or something and just being like, we're actually like basically the same. We're just warriors. Like,
I don't, I
ooh,
don't
that feels like a miss.
think so. Now thinking
I
about
can't
it,
think of one. I can't think of one. But man, they absolutely should have been besties. Um,
yeah, looking back on this now, like I feel like that should have been one of the characters that probably should have like really. I mean, granted, like okay, yeah, O'Brien because they were on the Enterprise together, but uh, that's one of the characters that I felt they should have connected more on, just
yeah,
for being, uh, just having
just
similar backgrounds when it comes to being warriors.
well, and being fearless, not afraid of
Yeah,
battle. Like, yeah, um, interesting. But yeah, so Cisco gets loaded up with two first officers. But it's interesting because Cisco, to your point, does a good job of balancing himself out, which, as I have explained with Myers Briggs, that personality type has to do, has to put extra work in to do
but he knows
sometimes.
himself.
Yeah, so like, what we've highly rated that being a good first officer, you compliment your captain. How do they compliment him exactly, though? Like,
Uh,
I'm not saying he's complete as a. No one's complete as a person, right? Like, I'm not like saying that, but I'm trying to think of like,
that is a good question that I did not think about. And now that you bring it up, um,
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Kira, they both did in different situations. So Kira's main thing, because they were kind of the same person, and really Kira was just learning from the commander, soon to be captain, about how to tame that side of her and use it
Mm-hmm.
in a very productive way, which was the culmination of her character when she went to Cardassia to be a part
Mm-hmm.
of that underground militia. Like it showed that she could be measured in a way to take on a very difficult assignment that
Yeah.
had like really good ramifications if this went well towards the war. So, and I felt like that was the best part of her character, but also where Kira helped Cisco and changing his way of thinking culminated with Bajor and him being the
Oh, you're
yeah,
right. That's a good point. The emissary
the
is what he was about
emissary.
to say.
With him being
Um,
the emissary, she
Look at us
she
finishing
helped
each other's
him.
sentences.
Yeah, thank you. It comes with riffing off each other for a while.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
she she helped him to understand how big of a title that was for the Bajorans,
Yeah.
because he didn't like, this was a title that was bestowed upon him that he did not want to have at all.
And she works on him for a while.
Oh wow, yes.
She like to the point where like there's an episode where she prays over him because of what was
Mm-hmm.
going on in the episode. Um, she's always translating. Yeah, that's a really good point. The orbs and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. Like she's always having to explain that why they need a basically a church in the promenade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And she
that's a really good point.
and she even points out how difficult it is for her to be under his command, because like, and she points out the fact that she deeply respects him just as a commanding officer, period. But the fact that he's a religious figure in a religion that she has grew up like full blown being immersed in, where she is like this, like she is like a part of her being is part of this religion. So the fact that she is working with a spiritual figure every single day of someone that like imagine like with us being Christians working with Jesus every single day.
Also, happy Resurrection Day, everybody.
Happy Resurrection Day. That's funny that I said that, and it's Easter when we're taping this.
Hmm. Oh, you thought we were the type of Star Trek fans
No,
that were like atheists or whatever? Nope,
no,
we're
no,
black and Christian. We are
no.
doing this.
Fully Southern Baptist over here. Um, I went to church this morning, by the
Well,
way.
we're Southern and we're Baptist. I don't think we're Southern Baptist because Southern Baptist has another.
Yeah, that does have a negative connotation to it. Yeah,
Yeah, it has a.
we're,
Well,
we're
well,
not
they
gonna
won't
touch on
call it
that.
negative. It has a connotation. It has a layer of assumptions on it that
Yeah,
I don't want to be applied to me.
I can understand that. I was saying that I was, but anywho,
Oh, are
uh,
you? Okay, we'll talk about that offline. Because I'm also a flavor of Baptist, so like
you are,
we can compare notes.
you are.
So
Uh, so like that's difficult. Like you, the emissary you've seen like within the text of the Bajoran context. I don't know what the name of their particular Bible. I don't even think they even like pointed that out. But they talked about the emissary and how he would come in and what he would do and things of that concern. So when she learned that that's what he was, she always had to temper that side of her every time she went to ops
yeah,
or did anything with him.
Yeah, we can talk about this in a future episode. Star Trek is supposed to be a very humanist, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, kind of atheist kind of point of view um, of the world. So a lot of people checking their spirituality at the door in a Starfleet meeting is like kind of a requirement.
Yeah, it
But
is.
at the same time, even with Worf and Kira and other people who have like interacted and worked in Starfleet, even the Vulcans to a certain degree, like have a higher level spirituality and things like that
Mm-hmm.
that work to it. So being a first officer that is uniquely suited to bring Cisco up to the moment that he very clearly lives up to is a good first officer trait. I will give him that. Between him and Worf, though, I feel like at some point they're like, "Man, we're just two dudes trying to win a war." Like,
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know what Worf does for him as a first
with
officer.
Worf is different. I really truly think that truly the dynamic of learning, as they've shown with previous Star Treks, of like the captain learning from the commander and vice versa. I really truly think that in Deep Space Nine, that only happened uh, with Cisco and Kira. Now, when it came to Worf, Worf was a different dynamic for Cisco, in my opinion, because I believe that Cisco saw uh, a, a level of himself within Worf. Not fully
Mm-hmm.
because he's a different, species that has like different feelings and stuff, especially with the blood within their blood of a Klingon, like being like within war and stuff. But he does point out from like here and there that like that side of you need to temper. You need to temper and you need to always think clearly before fully going into that side because that side of you can be destructive within being command of any ship within the Federation. So
Which Worf fully learns.
yes, 100%, especially the the lawyer episode of Deep
Mm.
Space Nine. And like I said, I don't remember an episode where Cisco learned from Worf.
I mean, like you said, on a rewatch, I'll be looking out for it. I mean, their first mission together, he sends Worf to go get intel on the Klingons, which he does. So
Mm-hmm.
he learns information from him, but I don't know. I honestly don't know when Worf challenges him
Mm-hmm.
or anything like that, or Cisco has to like develop as a leader from it. I'm
I
maybe
re-
there's an episode. I'm not.
I really think that situation is more of a mentor mentee type situation.
It feels like it because they're very similar.
Mm-hmm.
And if there was ever a Captain Worf series, I would expect him to be basically, well, I don't know, a Klingon Cisco, but like
Yeah.
with Worf around it. Like not entire, but like the way he makes his calculations, communicates with people, like it would feel very much more like Cisco than even Picard or anyone else he's been around.
Yes, I would agree. I would agree. So, like in this dynamic, Worf wasn't the quintessential first officer for Cisco. It was really Kira. Kira was technically his first officer. Worf was just somebody that came along, and then because they added the Defiant, and for those who don't know, if you're a true Trekkie, you know this. The reason why they added the Defiant into the series, they truly didn't want a Starfleet ship to be involved with the series, but it got strained of them doing a lot of the episodes within the runabout because of the constrained confinements of the
Right.
stage for the runabout. So it made it difficult to shoot certain aspects. And then where they felt that they were going with the Dominion, that the full blown war was going to come about, so they felt like that they had to give them some type of ship. to.
And great choice.
It was a great choice. Grateful because the ship was still small, but it was big enough for them to create a nice set for in those areas and be able to film the way that they wanted to for the series. But then also at the same time, they brought in certain situations of okay, what if you are the commanding officer of some space station that was involved with another species that's not a part of the Federation, and but you have that a person from that species representing that species to be a part of your crew, like would that person still be able to command a Federation starship? And in certain instances, it was a yes by the captain's discretion, but the Federation felt better that
Hmm.
Worf was the first officer, especially with the type of ship that the Defiant was.
Right. And of course, as first officer, he puts it to great use, saves the Federation from Admiral Layton, who spent part of the episode lauding Cisco as his time as first officer about speaking his mind,
Mm-hmm.
which we pointed out earlier. So, yeah, it comes full circle. So, yeah, I mean, the first officer doesn't always have to be additive. I guess it just depends on the commander, which the point I was making with Riker. A day ago when we started this podcast. The point I was making with Riker, that you really need to be in sync with your. It's almost a to relate it to the corporate world and a little bit the political world.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost a chief of staff role, which if you're too out of line with the person you're chief of staff for,
Mm-hmm.
it's just not going to work. And
It's
it's
not gonna work.
honestly why I never will take a chief of staff role. Um, they're all over LinkedIn and I'm qualified for them, but it's just like showing up and signing up for just someone else's agenda, judgment, all that stuff is just, ugh, ugh,
I see that's
I
the
ain't got
crazy
it.
thing. I feel like I would, but only if the person who I'm going to be chief of staff for is willing to listen to what like my pushbacks on situations. If they're willing to hear that out, and
Hmm.
if they wasn't just going to be like, I need a yes man. If they need a yes man, that's not me. I'm sorry. Like
Right.
that's just not me. Like I'm going to get to a point, no matter how much I grit and bear whatever the hell you're doing, I'm going to get to a point where I'm just going to tell you what the hell is on my mind, and you probably will not like it, and you will probably fire me.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So there's no point in me putting myself in that position. Now,
Yeah.
if you want somebody to be able to like give you like you have an agenda you want to push, but also at the same time you want to hear another side of said agenda to give some like type pushback, I will be that person 100%.
I can hear that. I can hear that. Yeah. I don't know if I'm quite there yet. That might be a maturity thing on my part, but yeah, I don't know even know. It's oddly enough because chief of staff is a little bit different enough from first officer, where I'm like, I
It
can see
is.
myself being a first officer. I don't know if I can see myself being a chief of staff, and it's because of exactly what you said. Like, if I can be myself, speak my mind, and my opinion is actually valid, maybe. But if I'm what how corporate people chief of staff, which is you're just a mere extension of the person who
Yes.
hired you,
Yes.
like, oh, I'm not gonna be that. I can't do
I
that. I'm
can't.
not gonna be that.
There's no point in you even putting me in in this position if you feel like I'm going to be that person. I'm not. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm just you when you're not in the room is not
Mm-hmm.
a thing that I'm gonna map to very well.
And, but
So
but being the leader, you understand that though. Like you understand that the person that's underneath you, yeah. Like for me, I did pick somebody that was different from the type of person that I am, but like I did that as a counterbalance thing. But also at the same respect, when it got to the point where she took over, we had gotten to a certain level of understanding the both of us. I learned from her just as much as she learned from me. So by the time
Mm-hmm.
she took over when she needed to, when I wasn't there, I knew the center was going to be ran in a way that I would approve of. It may not be completely ran the exact way that I would do it, but it's going to be ran in a way that I would definitely approve of. So when I got back and took back command of the center, like there was no, oh well, she did this better. No, it would be like, oh, Dante's back. All right, and the rest of the staff will understand. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is this is the ebb and flow of things.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's healthy.
I mean, we talked about Spock, we talked about Riker, we talked about for a certain degree Shelby, a touch of
And data.
Data. We even just hit on Kira and Worf, Chakotay.
Yep.
There are certain uh, first officers that we can't fully talk about because they're in the middle of, like Una. Like
Mm-hmm.
for
And I
all
love
intents
Ransom, even though he's at the end of his story.
and yeah, Ransom, but Ransom was created as a more of a comedic character.
But he
And
still showed some qualities.
he shows the qualities and they touched on it, but not to the same level.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of hard to even do like and for those who don't know who Ransom is, he's the first in command on the what Sar- why did I say
Lower decks.
in lower
The
decks,
Cerritos.
the Cerritos. I was about to say the Sarasota for some reason. The Cerritos, which is more of a comedic uh, type
Which needs to be brought back.
series.
Bring it back.
I I,
Bring it back,
I
Skydance.
love lower
Bring it
decks.
back.
But so Uno we can't really touch on, which we'll probably do an addendum or some type of additional show
And what are
later.
we going to do about T'Pol and Trip at this point?
I was going to
This
touch
deep
on
into
that.
the episode. Okay.
I was going to touch on that. We did want to kind of discuss the Paul and Trip, and this comes into play when, especially when we bring into Paul, because Paul was a part of the Vulcan government at around this time, and the
Also,
Vulcans.
note
Uh huh.
this is about my point of early Starfleet. The first officer role was wild.
Uh huh. Agreed.
Like, you didn't have to be in Starfleet, and you also could be the chief engineer, and we also could parse it out between you two. Like, okay, well, we're just making it up.
And the
You're just
federal.
assuming that if the ship blows up, then the command structure doesn't matter.
Yeah.
In those days.
This was around the time, for those who know, that the Federation wasn't even a thing yet. Star
Yes.
Trek Enterprise was supposed to be way more of a prequel to any of the series, to show like the infancy of the United Earth and the baby steps that we took to get to the point of being able to create the United Federation of Planets. So at this time where they created a Warp 5 engine that was capable of going to vast areas within the galaxy, the Vulcans did not approve of them launching this Warp 5 ship. So the only way that they would um, allow is a terrible term in this situation because it's dealing with two governments. It wasn't a more of a allow here because they were trying to form some type of alliance here. It was more of the only way that they felt comfortable with the Enterprise going off was if they added a high-ranking member of the Vulcan uh,
Well, Well, and also they were about to go deal with the Klingons,
That's another thing
which
too.
if you didn't know what you were doing, you could set off a quadrant-wide
But
a war across two quadrants, really.
was it the Vulcan militia or the Vulcan Science Directorate? I think it was the Vulcan Science Directorate. I think that's
Yeah, because they
considered
kind of
their, I guess, quote unquote militia. I guess so.
they only kind of had politicians back then, so yeah, it was pretty much the science folks. And it was like, take the Paul with you, make
Yeah,
sure you don't get all of us killed,
and
or
T'Pol
sorry,
was
unalive.
drafted to be that person. And really, in the beginning, Trip Trip holding the rank of commander was technically Archer's first officer, even though he
Well,
was the head of engineering.
he was Archer's best friend, and
Yes.
they would have had if T'Pol wasn't there, they would have had all their meals by themselves in the captain's mess.
Yes.
And the times where in the show where neither Archer or T'Pol were there to take command, Trip took command,
He
like kind
did.
of how like Scotty took command,
He did.
but like
I think in a different way
it's
though, because and granted, like we still have to rewatch those episodes, but
yeah,
I do feel like Trip when he took command, I could tell that he had some level of command experience.
yeah. Trip would have been first officer, but for T'Pol, like
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
which we were talking before we got started, last week on this podcast. We were talking a while ago about how awkward that would be because he's usually in engineering during the battle. So, like,
yeah.
if something happened to Archer, he'd have to run through a ship that's getting shot up
And like engineering is
to take
normally
command.
so deck one is the bridge, and engineering is normally on like a much lower deck at the more aft part of the ship. So it's like
Yeah,
that's a long way to like travel to get to the bridge to take command. So
yeah. And sometimes in some emergency situations, he is on the bridge at the engineering station, but oftentimes he is not in that show. And
that's
it's like,
that's why in later series they had to point out that a the head of the engineering is technically not a bridge officer. Like they had to distinguish bridge officer versus other heads on the ship.
yeah,
So it's like, yeah, the head of engineering could possibly be on the bridge because there is a uh, an area for the head of engineering to be at if they were to come on the bridge. That's what they pointed out in TNG, but didn't point out in the original series. But they had to distinguish that, like, yes, Geordi could take command of the Enterprise if need be, but technically he's not a bridge officer. He's just the head of engineering.
right, exactly.
But of course, in the times of like Star Trek Enterprise, I'm pretty sure that all this wasn't fully defined out.
They were
So
just making it up. And they kind of made that clear during the show that like we left space dock too early. We didn't even install the phase cannons. I almost call them phasers. Someone would come for me for that, but we didn't even install the phasers and like all that stuff. So yeah, they made it clear that like we don't really know what we're doing out here. We're gonna be
it's
very
like a
fortunate
baby
to
taking its
survive.
first steps. Yeah,
Yeah.
not fully knowing how this going to go, but we're gonna like one foot in front of the other. So
as
in
as first officers though,
uh
just
huh
to kind of tie that off or to try to help tie that off quickly. I think they tried to establish a Spock Kirk relationship between Archer and T'Pol, and then kind of extended that where like, yeah, if Trip was first officer, it'd just be two bros, doing what they're
yes,
doing. Um,
I
it
would.
didn't. It doesn't quite land for me like Spock and Kirk did because they didn't. I don't know how to explain it. Like, it has nothing to do with the fact that she's a woman and an attractive woman. It does have to do with like their back and forth, and I think how much danger they were in based on how little anyone knew what was going on. Like,
So
there was a certain level of competence for both of them, I guess, even though T'Pol always seemed to have the right answer. As I'm talking it out, maybe that's what it is. T'Pol always seemed to know what to do, and Archer should have just listened, and it was just like a reverse mentor-mentee situation that Archer was resisting because he was captain.
so
Like,
unpopular sports. You heard it here first. Patrick is a sexist. Uh, no, no, no. I'm not.
total misogynist. Actually, this is a Manosphere podcast. For the next 4 hours, we're just going to be talking about how much we don't like women. So,
We're not gonna throw that out as a thing. That was just a joke. That was a joke, everyone. If you did not know, um, the dynamic between Archer and T'Pol was like yes, because the Vulcans had a large amount of experience dealing with the rest of the galaxy than what the humans did at this point. So in a lot of situations, she was right. However, the situations that were the biggest dynamic was where uh, um, emotion, sympathy, those things came into a better judgment call than the logic of the Vulcans.
yeah,
Which was the dynamic there. It was T'Pol has more experience and understanding of this galaxy and can better guide Archer. However, Archer, being a human and understanding his level of feelings and emotions, can better convey that to T'Pol and giving a better understanding of certain situations that require that particular skill.
yeah. In their defense, it's a very primordial, early Kirk and Spock,
It is.
and it doesn't line up quite that way because Kirk and Spock have like hundreds of years of probably other human Vulcan interactions to build on, and Spock is half human and things
Yeah.
like that. So it makes sense that it doesn't match up. But in terms of like how she works as a first officer, where we put her in our ranking, even though we're not really ranking it, we're just talking about like the best ones. Because the point of the episode is talk about what a good first officer does.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I get why we like kind of look at it as like it doesn't quite match up, even though she does do some really good first officer stuff during the course of that series,
Well, the
and
issue,
becomes a Starfleet officer along the way. So,
well, the issue with T'Pol's character, and actually that part is false. She does not become a Starfleet officer. Um,
hmm?
she remains a member of the Vulcan Science Directorate up until the formation of the Federation. Uh, what you're thinking of was a flashback episode. Well, it wasn't a flashback episode. It's actually an episode where Archer he got some type of brain. Um,
Nah, I am not thinking of that. There's a picture of her on her in memory alpha page
mm-hmm.
where she has commander rank and a uniform. I mean, it's a uniform that people in the early 2000s would have designed for a model. It's a 7 of 9 type uniform, but she has the Enterprise logo on it. Like, at some point, she gets kicked out, and I thought she got kicked out and got adopted by Starfleet, basically. I could be wrong.
You know
I'm
what?
trying.
You you know what? You might be correct because, and I was going to point to this the when T'Pol's character actually became start to grow more into her own was season 3 and season 4 of
Yeah,
Star Trek Enterprise, and I feel like if season 4 wasn't the last season, and they were able to actually go out to probably like 6 or 7 seasons, that we would be looking at her as one of the higher ranking first officers uh,
yeah,
within this list because I don't think there wasn't enough time to flesh out her character than what they were able to
agreed.
do. And you're right. At one point in time, there was a issue with her people of mind melding, like that was a taboo,
Mm-hmm.
and apparently at that point, if you mind meld and it wasn't by an experienced mind melder, you would get some type of disease. That
Right.
if the Vulcans ever found out you had this disease, they would know that you mind melded, which would like pretty much put a scarlet letter on you.
Mm-hmm.
And they found
And
this
she didn't
out.
ask to be mind melded. That was
She did.
totally non-consensual.
It was non-consensual. She didn't
That
even
dude
know
needed
what
to
it
be
was.
airlocked.
Yeah, in all intents and purposes, she was graped. So we can't say the actual word, but like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Essayed.
uh,
Terrible.
like most definitely. And but like still, it gave her a scarlet letter, which is actually apt because in certain situations like that, there are women that are graped, and like people still look at them like they're just like ugh, even though it was a situation that was out of their control. They were lack of
It's
it.
awful.
Yeah, it's awful, and granted, that's another story for another day.
We're gonna be airlocking a bunch of people.
Man, what? Uh, but they ended up like decommissioning her. You're right, and Archer did his thing to pretty much make her a member of the. I forgot what did it. I guess it was just United Earth at that time because
Well,
they
she's in
did.
Starfleet, so I don't
It
know like what her
did they call it
citizenship status.
Starfleet though?
Yeah, they were Starfleet back then. Yeah.
I guess that's the part that I couldn't remember if they called it Starfleet or not.
Yeah, it was Starfleet. You don't conflate the Federation with Starfleet because it
Yeah,
is actually different. But yeah, they were always Starfleet back in the Enterprise days, and she makes the leap from being a sub commander for whatever the Vulcan thing is to being a commander in Starfleet when Vulcan gets all upset with her about all the stuff she because
hmm
it wasn't just the thing we need to airlock the dude for. It was also the because I just looked at her in Memory Alpha, the Panjim incident. Like she rang the bell on them having a intelligence listening station at a holy site and things like that. So she was like on thin ice from the beginning, and then like when it finally broke, they were like, "Well, you don't have to change your life. You can stay here, but you're just going to be in Starfleet now." So
got it. Well, I don't like I said if they would have actually like drew out that series to 6 or 7 uh, seasons, I feel like we would rank Paul higher. But like
we would.
we can both agree that Trip technically was not the first officer.
Technically, no. Technically, he was the second officer, which, when
Hmm
we start running out of things to talk about for 5 or 6 hours,
who
we
was the
will talk
best
about.
second officer? Future
We can get
episode.
to that episode.
Typing it down right now. This is just in case we run out of material.
Was it Scotty? Was it Data? Was it Trip? Who cared? Who was it on Voyager? Nobody cared. Maybe
No one
Tuvok?
cares.
I don't know.
I think Tuvok. Yeah, Tuvok actually was because when Janeway and Chakotay got put on that planet,
Oh yeah, you're right.
that they obviously had SEX at. Um,
What makes a great second officer? Nobody cares. Too much has
Tu-
happened at that point.
Tuvok was in command. So, I mean, I think we touched on practically everyone. I mean, yeah, there are some mentions with like, okay, Discovery, the cross between Burnham, Saru, and if you watched the last season, spoiler alert, uh, a new commander comes into play named Rayner.
I like Rayner. We're gonna give
Um,
them short mention here, but if we ever revisit this topic for like a quick conversation, if we're capable of it, the Rayner Burnham dynamic is exactly what you want as well, but we don't need to unpack it.
and I'm still 3 episodes left in the final season of Discovery. Um, but I understand what they're trying to do with the character, and having Burnham at the beginning when Saru decides to step down and go into being a uh, what's the word I'm looking for? A
He's
diplomat,
Yeah, he's like becoming an ambassador, but
ambassador.
he's like
Yeah,
an action-seeking ambassador. So,
yeah.
well, you'll find that out. Never mind. I'm not trying to spoil
Oh,
anything.
you just gonna spoil it for me? Thank you. When he
I
steps
mean, when
down to
Spock
become a
shows up in the last episode, it's like, wow, well,
oh
how'd that happen?
wow,
No, I'm
oh
just
that's
kidding.
great. When he steps down to become an ambassador, and he tells Burnham that one of the best qualities of a first officer is someone that will challenge you, someone that's not willing to uh, pretty much to a certain extent be a yes man or a yes woman, like
Hmm.
that they're actually going to challenge uh, your command decisions in certain situations, and you need that balance, that dynamic between the two.
Yep.
So, and I like that. That was one of the parts that I truly like, because it was just like, yeah, that's true. That a great leader would not choose someone that would just agree with them. They would choose somebody that's willing to speak up and speak their mind and actually be able to get pushback in certain situations.
Yep. I'm gonna help us in speed run a couple of things.
Uh huh.
Let's see. Data's first officer in the Redemption two-parter
Good episode.
was a DICK, and not a good first officer. Maxwell Burke and the Voyager Equinox, not what you want to live up to first officer. He did not have the judgment.
He was
Um,
awful. He
yeah,
was just evil persona. Like, how did he become? How did he get in the Federation?
he was a straight up villain. I don't know. He was more hardcore about being a villain than the captain, Captain Ransom, not to be confused with the other Captain Ransom.
Yeah, from Lower Decks. Yeah,
uh, but yeah, he was a jerk and got. So that's what happened to you. We talked about Data and we talked about Saru. We talked about Burnham. Burnham as a first officer um, was kind of funny because like if Georgia listened to her, maybe stuff wouldn't have gone down. But we needed a season. So
stuff needed to happen in order for the show to actually go the way that it needed to go. Yeah.
yeah, and the only other one that we didn't quite get to in depth was there was a mutinous executive officer on the Pegasus, um, the ship that Riker was like
Oh,
an ensign on, which goes back to my point about you need to have good judgment because at some point you might have to take over, and you gotta know when the right time for that is. Um,
granted, that was just in one episode where they talked about the command of another ship. So uh, I don't think we could have really talked more in the depth on that. However, it does parallel to someone willing to look at your command decisions and be like, okay, that's stupid. Why are we doing
yeah,
this? And
and
to
yeah,
look at like the safety of the ship, like especially
yeah,
if the captain isn't thinking about the safety of the ship.
exactly, and we didn't note it up top a few days ago when we started this podcast, but
Mm-hmm.
we didn't go looking for every first officer mention or a first officer appearance. I'm sure there have been alien first officers we've seen.
Yeah,
There was an episode where Riker was a first officer on a
on
Klingon
a Klingon
ship
ship.
that we
Yeah,
didn't totally talk about. Like there's probably first officers everywhere that have been mentioned or whatever that we didn't get to, but we're just trying to figure out what makes a good first officer.
but I
And
think we touched on a number of the officers to be able to form a good uh, conclusion on what makes a good first officer, and it goes back to what we talked about at the top of the episode. Just like having
Mm-hmm.
someone that counters you, that's willing to say what's on their mind, that's willing to push back, not only think about the safety of their crew, but also think about the safety of their captain at the same time. Like
Yep.
someone that knows that that fine line, because there's that regulation that states that the first officer could take command of a ship if the captain is deemed unfit. So like finding that fine line there of when should I pull this card, and there was a few times that Riker did that, a few times that Chakotay by the extension
Mm-hmm.
tried to do that uh, a few times. Well, one that I could think of with Burnham that did that.
Yep.
Um, I don't to Paul. I don't feel like ever truly did that. None of.
Having
Mm-hmm.
being able to speak truth to power, having the good judgment to know when you need to step up and really take command of a situation, even if there's someone in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
The crew is counting on you to do that, especially in life and unalive situations.
Mm-hmm.
To the extent that we're
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to stick to that, we're gonna have to decide what we're gonna do with that because I feel weird saying that word so many times. but um, but yeah, those are all things. I think there's one more thing where Una was training Kirk and the musical episode, and the
Mm-hmm.
whole thing was about relating to your crew as well. And the people that are below you, being approachable to a crewman and an ensign, people
Mm-hmm.
wanting to talk to you about your career, their careers, and things like that. Like you're not above it at that point. You're the next most powerful person on the ship, but like you really need to have that like empathy and understanding where like
Mm-hmm.
yeah, those two ensigns monitoring the nacelles that have no idea what's going on from mission to mission are going to talk to me and be like, how do I become lieutenant? And you still need to know like what the answer is
Yeah.
for them. And so I think not relating to your crew, which was the point of that song that Una and Kirk were singing in the musical episode that one of our collaborators on this
My
podcast,
brother Charles.
uh, yeah, that Charles really hated. I think it's still like a really important thing. Like we've talked about the judgment and speaking truth to power and things like that, but being able to still relate to everyone else, like I think you still got to be able to do that.
You do. You
And we
do.
talked about that with Seven in the series that you don't ever like to talk about on here. She was able to do that too. So
Because one of the biggest things with being in command, either you being the head or even the next in command, is you are really a person that's managing people and their personalities.
mm-hmm,
Like you really, for those that don't fully understand that, I feel like do not make great leaders, because first
mm-mm.
and foremost, you are the leader of other people, and you have to manage their personalities. That means understanding them, the way that they tick, what they like, what they don't like, and being able to help motivate them to achieve the outcome that you want. So those that don't understand that, I truly believe do not become not so great. I was about to say commanders or captains, but like, yeah, for this particular situation, yeah, commanders or captains, but also like leaders in real life.
Yeah, 100%.
So we thank y'all for joining us. I will probably
Dante
say,
will edit this down. Don't worry.
oh,
I don't know how he's going to, since we talked for
I'm
I don't
somehow
know how
gonna
long.
have to edit this down to 2 hours. We are slowly approaching 3 hours and 30 minutes. But
This might be a two-parter.
woo, yeah. For an episode that we thought we weren't going to talk much about, we ended up talking a lot about.
Oh yeah, low research. It just let's just riff
Yeah.
but I don't think we understood that Starfleet really writes the first officer as a noble moral authority character that is
Hmm.
there to uphold the values and show even better leadership than the captain sometimes. And I think we both underestimated how long of a topic that could be.
We truly did. We truly did. But I appreciate having this discussion with you, of course, as always, Patrick. Like, because not only did it expand my knowledge on the first officers of Star Trek, but it helped me to appreciate them more as well. So I appreciate this topic. I like this topic.
This was a great topic. We're going to pick a shorter topic for next week.
Yeah, yeah, we'll try not to be this long winded as normal. But I appreciate everybody for joining us. Every unpopular explorer that is listening, I appreciate y'all. Thank you for joining us. As always, if you like this episode, please hit the like button. If you disliked it, screw yourself. No, you can, you
We don't
can,
care.
if you didn't like it, hit the dislike button. Uh, Comment below. Let us know things that we missed, things that we probably could have talked about more in depth of. Even areas that we probably like, our knowledge of Star Trek is very vast, but also at the same time we do miss something or misrepresent something. So please feel free to let us know like the errors that we have. We'll probably have another episode of like unpopular errors that we had from previous episodes. So
Hmm.
I appreciate you all. Y'all have a wonderful, wonderful day. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. And as always, this is something that I've really grown to enjoy about the ending of every episode is ending it with the great quote from Captain Picard, and that is,
It is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That is not a weakness. That is life.
everyone have a wonderful day, wonderful rest of the week. Join us again next Sunday as we talk about another strange instance in Star Trek. See y'all.